Good afternoon, dear members. Respected Advocate Dr. Itsc Jain, Speaker of the session, CA Murtuza Kachwala, Secretary WIRC. On behalf of WIRC, we welcome all the participants in today's program on refresher course on representation skills. Friends, I believe it is said that unless and until you are able to present yourself, till that time whatever work you have done, whatever knowledge you have, you cannot make an impact. And in today's environment, especially in income tax department, this representation is more important because if any mistake or if any error happens in representation, it can impact your client in a big way. And especially in faceless assessment, when everything has to be on paper, this representation skills will require a great efforts to understand and to get insight as to how to make an effective representation, because you are not able to meet the assessing officer, you are not able to explain him orally. Only thing is that whatever you write, whatever you represent, that is going to decide the fate of your assessee. So in today's scenario, representation is the most important aspect, especially in income tax, to express yourself and to make your client make the representation of the your assessee in a positive way. We are fortunate today to have Shri Itsc Jain, who is PhD in history, who has joined Indian Revenue Services in 1982. He served in income tax department at various cities, including Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, Chennai, Lucknow, Dehradun, Meerut, at different levels from assistant commissioner to commissioner, principal commissioner, and chief commissioner of income tax. He has served as member and subsequently vice chairman of Income Tax Settlement Commission at Calcutta, Mumbai, and Chennai for about 3 years. During his tenure as a settlement commission, he was involved in settlement of large number of complex cases. He has very vast exposure of search, seizure matters, and settlement cases. I'd further like to state that before joining the settlement commission, Sri Itsc Jain sir has handled challenging charges like Commissioner of Income Tax Central, Director of Criminal Investigation, has played vital role in investigation and post search investigation in many wide scams nationwide scams unearthed by the income tax department, including security scams, share premium, client code modification, etc. I feel pleased to state that after retirement from such an illustrious career in January 2019, Shri Itsc Jain sir has now actively come out to guide taxpayers and professionals to avail the benefit of esteemed institution of Income Tax Settlement Commission and other complex tax issues. Settlement remains a relatively unventured forum, and majority of professionals are not familiar of its functioning. Shri Jain is very sensitive to taxpayer issues and always willing to mentor and guide. Before joining IRS in 1982, he had started his career as advocate at Delhi, which was discontinued on selection in IRS. Now, after long tenure of his government service, he is back to his original innings as advocate. He is into tax consultancy and part of professional fraternity. Because of his knowledge and competence, he is a source of inspiration to all of us. He is true friend, guide, and mentor to all the tax professionals and taxpayers. He is presently also contributing as member in the Audit Advisory Committee of C&AG for Western region. He has vast experience of training and a regular speaker on tax related issues in various forums and also on spiritual subjects including Gita, self-inquiry, Buddha, and Mahavir. His self-improvement talks on several topics including You Are the Architect of Your Own Life are available in YouTube. His topic of PhD is Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose contribution in freedom struggle, particularly from abroad. So friends, with this brief introduction, I hereby request Honorable Shri Jain sir to please take over the proceedings and enlighten all of us on today's topic, that is representation in search matters and income tax settlement commission. Before that, I would like to request the Secretary WIRC Shri Murtuza Kachwala to say on this particular topic.
Thank you, Jayesh bhai. I welcome Honorable Shri Itsc Jain sir for today's session, and I also welcome all the participants. So, as we go higher, the number of like the practitioners come down. So like if an accounting or return is to be done, any accountant or even a tax practitioner, like maybe qualified, not qualified, also doing. As you go ahead and you go to an assessment, maybe there are a lot more, but if you go to appeal, scrutiny, etc., the number comes on reducing. And there are very few people who specialize in top end work, and hence we need to be equipped also top end. Our skills also has to be top end, and whether it is oral, written communication, representation, and subject matter knowledge as well of the act and the regulations. And hence it is very important. There's a niche area like where we can put in a lot of efforts, and maybe it is that much more remunerative also, and then like you need to be that much more equipped as well. So I think with that, happy learning to all, and welcome to this second session. And we got 2 more sessions to go, and excellent speakers are there. Any doubt, any question, participants can put in the chat box, and we'll take it up with the speakers. So that's it from my side, and over to you again, Jayesh bhai. Thank you.
Yeah, before without wasting any further time, I request Dr. Itsc Jain sir to kindly guide the participants. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Murtaja-ji. And I am also thankful to Jayesh Kalaji for a nice introduction. I welcome all the participants to this webinar. The subject of the discussion is representation in search and seizure matters, and also representation before Income Tax Settlement Commission. So I discussed this topic with the professionals in the ICAI, and I also told them that there is not much for representation in the search and seizure matters like we represent it before a quasi-judicial authority. So now first I deal with the representation, the role of professionals in the search and seizure matters, because as you know, search and seizure is a enforcement activity, and in the enforcement activity, the representative skills of the professional work in a different way. So let us start. I have made a few points in the form of a presentation that I am starting. Let us first know what are the rights and duties of the person searched. As soon as the search starts, then there is usually the search team also tells the person searched that these are the rights and duties. That is to see the warrant of authorization. That is first right. To verify the identity of each member of the search party. When the search party is entering the premises of the person searched in the house or maybe the business premises, it is the right of the assessee to see the identity ID proof, and they can also take personal search of all the members of search party before the search commences, and then to insist on personal search of ladies being taken only by a lady with strict regard to decency. The same way duties are also there to allow free and unhindered ingress, to place signatures on search warrant statements. When the search party enters the house, first thing they do, they produce a warrant of search to the person in whose name it is issued, and that person is supposed to sign that search warrant, to identify all receptacles in which assets or books of accounts and documents are kept, and to hand over keys of such receptacles, to identify and explain the ownership of the assets or books of accounts and other documents found in the premises. Then further rights are to take medical assistance and meals. It is the right of the assessee that in between, if there is some medical problem, he can call the doctor, and the search party has to allow. Similarly, if there are the time for meals, lunch, and maybe for snacks, etc., there can be no objections from the search party side. To inspect the seals placed on various receptacles in the course of search, and subsequently at the time of reopening, the assessee can also put his own seals also, to have copy of Panchanama together with all annexures. These are the rights. And on the duty side, not to allow or encourage the entry of any unauthorized person not to remove any article without the notice of the authorized officer, to answer all questions truthfully and to the best knowledge. He should not allow any third party to either interfere or prompt during recording of a statement. So you see, these are the basic rights and duties of a person against whom a search warrant has been issued and whose house or whose business premises are being searched. They are the basic things any consultant is supposed to know. Then recently, in the month of August, there was a taxpayer charter issued, and in the taxpayer charter also some rights and obligations of the taxpayers have been highlighted with the objective to be fair and just with the taxpayers and to harassment. Some of the important taxpayer are to respect taxpayer privacy and conduct inquiry as per due process. There will be no undue inquiry or enforcement action. That is a tax right, important tax right, to give a taxpayer the freedom to choose their area. See, there have been a lot of malpractices that sometimes investigations suggesting that you choose this particular area. Therefore, in the taxpayer charter itself, it has been indicated now. It is the prerogative of a taxpayer to choose whomsoever he wants to choose as a tax consultant to ensure accountability for the can be responsible or accountable for the any actions which are likely to affect adversely the maybe in the monetary terms or otherwise against which affect the rights of the taxpayer, to put in place a procedure to raise complaints and grievance redressal mechanism. These are the new rights which have been, highlighted in a number of rights given in the taxpayer charter. It is a new thing which has come now, like on the parity of the advanced countries. Some of the taxpayers' obligations are to make a complete and honest disclosure of facts and information to the department, to maintain accounting records and documents as per IT law, to pay their IT dues and other compliance within time. So we will find that there are a lot of rights as well as a lot of duties which are according to which the person who has been searched or a taxpayer has to comply. Now, the first important question which comes, that where the role of a tax consultant starts, whether the tax consultant can enforce his project at the time of search. So, though IT Act, Income Tax Act, does not prohibit the presence of tax consultant at the time of search, there is no prohibition in the IT Act. But as per the court judgments, the assessee is not entitled to insist that tax consultant as a matter of right should be available to him at the time of search. It is the discretion of the authority. He may allow the presence of the AR or he may refuse. In general practice, when the search starts, the two witnesses from the neighboring places are made. They are called, and then they have to sign, and they are made witnesses. And in the presence of those witnesses, the search proceedings, all the search and seizure activities, they start. And only after sufficient time, when everything is already gathered, books of accounts and the documents, statements have been recorded, and then if there are gaps towards the end, before the search is concluding, managed by AR or the tax consultant is asked how that he can reconcile various discrepancies or gray areas found during the course. So at the time of enforcement action, the AR has very limited role, except if permitted agent can be of help to the taxpayer as well as the department by ensuring trust and compliance. He may also be able to manage documents with reference to the regular books of accounts. general impression is that many times, because the assessee or taxpayer is not well conversant with all the books of accounts and maybe what returns have been filed, what assets have been disclosed, what properties have been disclosed. So when the search is going to conclude and the search party has taken overall view of the incriminating documents and other evidences, and they want to record a concluding statement at that time, either through telephonically, or many times the professional of the person comes and he facilitates the team to find out, to reconcile various discrepancies so that the gaps are minimized and there may not be unnecessarily adverse inferences drawn against the assessee, because in the absence of any reconciliation, many assets, gold, jewelry, and other cash found at the time of search may be taken as unexplained. So it happens that at the last stage of the search, usually professionals or tax consultants are asked to come and they facilitate, they help the assessee to give answers and to explain. And many times, even when the assessee wants to come forward to make any disclosure, that is also done in the presence of tax consultants. But in good number of searches, tax consultants may not be present at the time of search, or the department may not allow them to come at all. So the role of the tax professional, tax consultant starts when the search is over. So there are some precautions which are to be taken by the taxpayer or the time statement. First is, assessee should not make confession in hurry. Subsequently, he may find difficult to retract. What happens, assessee, when there is a search going on and 1 or 2 days are already over, assessee feels lot of pressure, mental pressure also, and then sometimes in order to get rid of the search proceeding, he makes disclosure. Sometimes that disclosure is not based on any incriminating documents, but he comes forward and makes a disclosure. And many times he will give answers to some questions categorically when he is himself not sure and he has no evidence in support of that. So it is always advisable, assessee is not sure to give answer on any points, he can say he will verify and then he will be able to give reply, because in the absence of documentary evidence, because of a kind of mental kind of situation he finds it difficult to answer this question. But that should not be just kind of evasive reply, it should be a truthful reply, because the search team can, assess the position of the assessee. Sometimes assessee is illiterate also, sometimes they are not so well educated, many times they are totally in ignorance of many of their returns, their transactions also, and they are all looked by their chartered accountant or maybe their accountant or their financial controllers. So in the absence of those support team, the assessee can definitely say that I'll check and then only I'll be able to give reply on this point. Because after confession, if retraction is made, though retraction can be made by the assessee, but then that retraction has to be supported by a lot of cogent evidence that these were the circumstances, under these circumstances I made this disclosure, and now that disclosure was incorrectly made, and therefore I want to now retract my disclosure. So this is one thing. Then after the search, the main role of tax consultant start after the search. The AR should gather all the relevant information, including the statements, and take note of incriminating evidence to find out whether disclosure made is correct. that is the first thing which any authorized representative has to overall take a view of the material which has been seized and which may be in know of the SSE. He has to discuss it with the SSE after the search is over, and what statements have been given, what disclosure has been made at the time of search, and then AR has to assist the SSE in post-search statement, because many times after conclusion of search, SSE is called again by the investigating team, that is by the officers of investigation wing, and they ask so many questions about the documents which were seized, or maybe there are lockers yet to be operated, or maybe there are some prohibitory orders. So a lot of work which helps the investigating team in preparation of appraisal report, that is only subsequent to the search operation. So there the role of tax consultant is very, very crucial, very, very vital. He may be present at the time of recording of his statement also, though he may not, he should not interfere, and he should not prompt the SSE. SSE is free to take the questions and answer them, but merely because he is present here, it brings a lot of confidence to the taxpayer, and he can give his answers with the full confidence. He may also request the investigation wing to give copies of sworn statements and seized materials, because what happens when search is over, at the time of drawing of Panchnama, many times the statements are not given to the SSE. Moreover, the seized material is also taken by the search team. So after the search is over, and if some seized materials are very important, or maybe some sworn statements are needed, then copies of those statements have to be obtained, whatever way, so that the subsequent statements have to be given by the applicant, SSE or taxpayer, have to be in conformity with the statements given at the time of search. Therefore, it is also advised to the taxpayer and all the tax consultants advise that whatever they are speaking at the time of search, they should broadly keep it in their mind. He is expected to, a consultant is expected to examine all the incriminating material deeply and to see if the statements made by the SSE during the search are not incorrect and disclosures are adequate and not excessive or less. That exercise he has to make again, whether whatever was disclosed at the time of search was fine, or we need to increase it, or we want to make any variation, or we want to supplement it with kind of explanation, whatever, that call has to be taken by tax consultant in the post search time when in appraisal report is under preparation. AR should advise the SSE to cooperate with the investigation officer and furnish requisite details from time to time. It is also the duty of the tax consultant to make full compliance to the requirements of the investigation officers, because they are in the process of making appraisal report. In the appraisal report, all the incriminating documents, replies of the taxpayers, and whatever assets have been seized, and whatever they find is the undisclosed income, they will find out, they'll try to find out. So if we are in a position to explain and to give satisfactory answer to documents which are seized or regard to this investment in the assets, it would be easy for us, and those kinds of our replies will help the investigation team also to make a balanced appraisal report. Proper information explanation to the investigation officer would help in preparation of balanced appraisal report. After appraisal report is completed, the cases are centralized. This happens that once the appraisal report comes, then the chief commissioner and DG, they meeting, and then it is decided where this group of cases where search has taken place to be centralized. Now at this particular time, again, it is the duty of the tax consultant to take a decision after consulting the SSE whether this case is fit for approaching to the Income Tax Settlement Commission, or should this case be assessed by in the normal process of assessment, that is in the center circle? In case of ITSC option, the AR's role very vital in coordinating with senior consultants in briefing, preparation, and representation of the case before the ITSC. So, see that in overall situation, the search and seizure matters, at the time of search, the role of tax consultant is very minimal. Only in some cases, towards the conclusion of the search, maybe the tax consultant is asked or requested or allowed by the search team to be present there. But as soon as the search is over, the role of tax consultant becomes very crucial in making a scrutiny of all incriminating material, taking stock of all seized assets, and then coordinating with the investigation wing and giving necessary reply, furnishing information, being present at the time of recording of estate of various persons, and then also satisfying the requirements of the investigation wing, so that avoidable inferences, avoidable adverse inferences can be ruled out, and a very balanced appraisal is made. Whatever is seized now, or whatever is in the knowledge investigation wing, it is going to find a place in the appraisal report. But wrong inferences many times are made by the investigation wing, making the report very heavy, where the settlement may be only of few crores, and they make a very huge figure of 30 crore, 50 crore, 100 crores. So all those things can be avoided by the proper coordination by the tax consultants with the investigation wing. Now I'll take the second aspect, that is the representation before income tax commission. So the role of tax consultant before income tax settlement commission is very, very important, because income tax settlement commission is a quasi judicial authority. It is an alternative dispute resolution forum where direct tax disputes are settled by way of settlement and arbitration. There is a chapter in Income Tax Act, section 245A to section 245L, and this Income Tax Settlement Commission was established in 1976 based on the recommendation of Justice Manchu Committee, and its objectives were provide a machinery for defaulting tax to come to settlement, offer speedy settlement of disputes, to reduce litigation by providing finality of proceedings, to resolve controversies in complicated cases, to ensure speedy collection of taxes at low cost. What used to happen that earlier, when the search used to take place, their assessment would be made, then there will be appeals, then IT80, then High Court. So it would take a lot of time. And in the Justice Manchu Committee, in his report on black money and tax evasion, came to the conclusion that there must be some window for one-time tax evaders, that they can come out clean, they can make clean breast of their affairs. And then this institution of settlement commission was established, which is having now 7 benches all over the country. This is the organizational structure. Income tax settlement, we have a bench at Delhi that is headed by chairman, and there are 2 additional benches at Delhi: Delhi Additional Bench 1, Delhi Additional Bench 2. Then we have 2 additional benches at Mumbai: Additional Bench 1, Additional Bench 2 Mumbai, and then we have 1 at Kolkata and 1 at Chennai. This way, we have 7 benches, 1 principal and 6 other benches. The difference in the principal bench is that principal bench is headed by chairman and 2 members. Other benches are headed or presided over by vice chairman and 2 members. That is the only difference. The chairman has a special power to constitute a special bench also if required. Then what is the structure of additional bench? As I explained that every bench has 1 vice chairman and 2 members except the principal bench, and then there is a 1 director investigation, 1 additional director investigation and inquiry officers. And on the administration side, every bench has a administrative officer, superintendent and staff members. This is the structure of every bench all over the country, and the bench is almost, the working of bench is the same as of ITAT. Of course, there is a lot of difference in the powers and the working of the Income Tax Settlement Commission and ITAT. Now, what is the territorial jurisdiction? That principal bench New Delhi has Delhi, Madhya Pradesh, and some other union territories. Additional bench 1 Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh, and some part of central Delhi. Then additional bench New Delhi has Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, and some part of the Delhi also. Now we are more concerned about the Mumbai. There are 2 benches here. Additional bench Mumbai has jurisdiction over part of Mumbai, then the entire Maharashtra, and Karnataka, Goa, Daman and Diu. This is the jurisdiction of additional bench 1 Mumbai. Additional bench 2 Mumbai has part of Mumbai and entire Gujarat and the international taxation. Additional bench Kolkata has the entire eastern part of our country, Bihar, Meghalaya, Orissa, West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and entire northeastern states. And additional bench Chennai has jurisdiction over Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry, and also the Hyderabad automatically included. Then functioning of ITSC bench. From here, the tax consultants are supposed to know that how the functioning of the ITSC takes place. Every bench consists of a chairman or vice chairman as a presiding officer and 2 other members. All decisions taken by majority. If there are 3 members, whatever is decided, either it has to be unanimous or minimum 2 members have to be on one side, then it will be taken by majority. Minimum requirement of the functioning of bench is 2 members. At least bench cannot function unless there are 2 members. Sometimes there are vacancies in a bench and there is only 1 member. So then chairman has a power to assign additional charge of 1 member from the another bench. ITSC, Income Tax Settlement Commission, is a quasi-judicial authority. It's like ITAT only, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal only. It is in nature of an arbitrational tribunal. High courts have also held so. Its power is that of arbitrational. So since it is arbitrational in nature, it has much more powers and much more discretion compared to any other tribunal, about which we will talk in the succeeding discussions. It follows simple court procedure for hearing. There is a, like we have a courtroom ITAT functioning, similarly we have a courtroom for Income Tax Settlement Commission working also. It may get facts verified or investigated. Proceedings before the Income Tax Settlement Commission are private and confidential. Like in ITAT, all proceedings are public. Anybody can go there and can sit and can hear the proceedings. But in the Income Tax Settlement Commission, all the facts submitted by the applicant, who is called applicant, the SSC, very confidential. He is disclosing facts with regard to the income, which was not disclosed so far. So the statement of facts which is prepared things, they are not revealed to the outside, so it should not go in the public domain. So therefore the proceedings remain very private and confidential, and only either the bench and its officers or the person, that is the assessee and his counsel, they only know about the SOF, statement of facts, and other related details. Then requisite conditions for filing applications. As we have also discussed that, I'll just rush through this, that for any case which can come before the commission, there must be assessment proceedings pending before the AO. It may be through 148 or maybe issue or notice under section 153A subsequent to search, or maybe because of 263 or 264. It may be set aside by the Commissioner of Income Tax, or it may be IT80 under section 254 has set it aside to the file of the AO. Then the proceedings become pending before the assessing officer. Then only the assessee is eligible to approach the settlement commission. Then the another condition is that you have not disclosed your full income before the income tax department earlier. Now you are ready and willing to disclose full and true income in this application before the settlement commission, and there must be a proper explanation on manner of deriving such income. There is a requirement of additional tax payment of more than rupees 50 lakhs in main search case. If it is search case, then there is a main search case and there are related cases. So in the main search case, the settlement can be approached only if the minimum tax liability on the further income to be disclosed before commission is 50 lakhs, and in remaining case it should be 10 lakhs, and so is the case for the normal cases. And procedure for filing application, here there is a form number 34B which the tax consultant is supposed to go through. It's a very basic details of taxpayer, assessment years involved, how much income you are disclosing, what is the tax computation, the proof of payment of taxes and interest. The fee is rupees 500. There is a one intimation form under section 34BA that has to be submitted to the AO that we are filing an application before commission, and once that form is filed, the assessing officer becomes totally, he is prevented, his jurisdiction over the case ceases to exist so far as those assessment years are concerned in which the assessee is approaching the settlement commission. You have to enclose the proof of payment of additional tax, including interest. And then most important thing is you have to prepare as a tax consultant a statement of facts in support of true and full disclosure of income and the manner of deriving of such income. So from here, the role of tax consultant becomes very important. Like, first you have to analyze the entire incriminating documents found at the time of search. Also assets which involve properties or maybe gold and jewelry, or maybe the expenditures of personal nature which were not disclosed to the department. On the basis of all the incriminating evidence and the assets found and detected at the time of search, as the tax consultant is supposed to work out what is the correct amount of undisclosed income, and based on that he needs to prepare a suitable statement of facts, for which he needs to take consultation and guidance from a senior professional dealing with settlement matters, because settlement matters are a bit specialized. Of course, they are adult or any new tax professional can also venture, but he needs to be mentored or to be guided by a senior professional. Then role of authorized representative in preparation of SOF. There are two types of situations. One is where it is a search case. In this search case, the professional has to examine all the seized documents, including the digital data, because nowadays a lot of digital format information, maybe WhatsApp or maybe the message in the mobile or maybe in computer or laptop, lot of data is stored. So all that data is also retrieved and taken by the investigation team or the search team. So all that data has to be examined, and the tax consultant has to find out the truth from the assessee also, that what kind of data was there, what kind of entries were there, what is the total amount of possible uh, undisclosed income. Based on those data, that estimation has to be made to examine all statements recorded during search and subsequently. Moreover, at the time of search, many times many relevant queries and questions are asked by the search team. So now after search, since the copies of the statements have been taken, obtained, and also the copies of the seized material and other digital data information has been obtained, it needs a very thorough examinations on the part of tax consultant to verify each and everything and then find out what are its implications in terms of undisclosed income. Because if we are going to prepare for settlement commission, we cannot hide anything, we cannot manipulate anything. We have to explain each and every document which is in possession of such team, which has been seized. Maybe it may have implication or it may not have implication, but it is our duty, it is the obligation of the taxpayer and the tax consultant not to hide, not to conceal anything from the settlement commission, and it should be properly dealt with in the statement of facts. To ascertain the unaccounted income, expenditure, unexplained investment and undisclosed assets, then for this purpose, in most of the cases, the tax consultant needs to prepare cash flow chart to the inflow and outflow of cash on the basis of these documents. Let's suppose it's a case of builder or developer, lot of own money has been received, lot of unaccounted expenditure has been made in cash, maybe for payment to certain authorities or maybe payment in nature of compensation or payment for buying the material. So one needs to prepare a chart of unaccounted cash inflow and outflow to find out that as a group, suppose there may be 10 members of a group, there may be 3 or 4 or 5 entities. Before tax settlement commission, there is a approach of comprehensive settlement of all cases together. So one can treat all the activities together so far as cash flow chart is concerned, and inflow, if there's an inflow in that particular chart, adjustment by way of outflow can be taken to examine into the contents of incriminating documents and deal with them correctly and truthfully, as we have already discussed this. Ascertainment of correct amount of undisclosed income to be disclosed, that's very challenging task. For this, the experience of senior professional is needed. For example, there may be innumerable and those documents may be overlapping, like on money has been received and then there may be some assets have been purchased. Now, if normal assessment proceedings, the assessing officer is likely to make addition on account of the on money receipts in the cash. At the same time, in the different heads, if suppose the on money has been received in the hands of one firm and suppose some property has been purchased unexplained in the hands of another entity, the AO is likely to make addition in both the cases. But if we are before the settlement commission, we can claim the benefit of capitalization, that the same money which has been received on account of own money has been utilized for purchasing the individual property. So the source will be in one hand and its application may be claimed in another hand. Prepare statement of facts dealing with all relevant facts on disclosure of income and manner of deriving of income. The manner of deriving of income, is also very important in statement of facts. You need to discuss the modus operandi, how the income was earned. Of course, there is no requirement of any documentary evidence, any evidence to be submitted along with the manner of deriving income. We need to explain that the assessee had earned this much further income which was not disclosed to the department, and this income was earned like this. Suppose this of builder and developer. We find that there is a on money receipt of 20 crores. Documentary evidence is there found, and then there are unexplained or unaccounted expenditure of 5 crores, and there may be unexplained investment in property, gold, jewelry, etc. of 3 crores or 4 crores. 4 crores, let us say. Now, in this, we will write that the assessee was developing land, parceling them into plots, also constructing flats, and he has received own money while selling flats, while selling plots, and he has also utilized the part of own money received on account of the business expenditure and partly on account of investment in immovable property, gold and jewelry. So now we will prepare a statement of facts in which manner of deriving of income would be the activity of receiving own money on account of sale of flats, on account of sale of plots, and also incurring expenditure and making investment. Like this we can explain. And then when we go to the settlement commission, we can only choose to apply a profit rate on the own money receipt, maybe 30%. If we apply a rate of 30% on 20 crores, that own money has to be extrapolated further, because we need to verify whether the own money of these 20 crores which was found in the documentary evidence is taking note of all the flats and plots sold, or there are further flats and plots which were sold, and some of the plots and flats own money received on them have not been shown. Then we will extrapolate. That will be called an extrapolation, and it is the duty of tax consultant to make that extrapolation. Suppose this figure goes to 25 crores. So in this statement of facts, we will write that we have earned 25 crores, 20 crores as per evidence, and further 5 crores on these particular plots and applying the same ratio. Then we will write that we have also incurred a lot of expenditure. Some evidence is there. So the right way to determine undisclosed income would be by applying a profit rate. And suppose we can offer profit rate of 25% on the own money. So 25% of 25 crores will come 6.25 crores. That will be our income. And we can claim adjustment or application or utilization against assets which are unaccounted, like the and immovable property, purchase of jewelry and gold, and if there is some personal expenditure on account of marriage, etc. So in this case, it was 4 crores, and we are offering 6.25 crores. 4 crores adjustment we will take as application or utilization, and further 2 crores we can claim that, sir, we must be given benefit of capitalization, cash in hand, so that we can pay our taxes. And the settlement commission has discretion to allow you benefit of cash and also capitalization. Now, in this particular case, also you find that if you go to the normal assessment channel, the assessing officer is going to make addition of 25 crores on account of own money, another 6 crores or on account of unexplained expenditure, that is 6 crores 25, that will be 31 crores, and another 4 crores on account of unexplained assets. So that 35 crores, and on crores maybe they apply section 68, 69, and they invoke provisions of section in BBE. So if then the tax rates go 70%. So 35 crores, then you apply the tax rate of 75%. So it comes around 27 crores. So tax liability will be 26 crores in different hands, and then you is going to penalty proceedings under different sections, and then prosecution also, and assessee has to go in CIT appeal against assessment order, against penalty orders, has to go face the court proceedings in prosecution matters, and then further traveling to the ITAT. But if you go to the settlement commission, in this particular case, you just offer 6.25 crores, which may be increased by the settlement commission to another 1 or 2 crores more, 8 crores. Then also you have to pay tax as per normal rate of taxes, that is 30% plus surcharge. So even if it comes to 7 or 8 crores, the tax would be not more than 2.5 crores. So as against the tax of 27 crores on assessment only, pending penalty proceedings, pending prosecution proceedings, here you have total peace of mind, and the settlement commission can complete the settlement within a time frame of 18 months. Usually it takes 10 to 12 months for the settlement commission to complete the case. So in the such cases, it is always advisable to approach the settlement commission. In every such case, it is the duty of consultant to consult a senior advocate or chartered accountant, whoever dealing with the settlement cases, and seek his opinion whether this case would be appropriate for the settlement commission. Professional is going to guide him. Yes, these are the benefits and these approach settlement. So kindly always don't miss this opportunity to consult and to see whether the case is appropriate for settlement. In the normal process now, in the search and seizure cases, the application of higher rates of taxes is there. There are so many penalties, and there is a long process of first assessment, then CIT appeal, then ITAT, then High Court. It takes not less than 15 to 20 years to finally settle or dispose of the proceedings. It is always better in such cases to approach the settlement commission, or at least seek the consultation first hand with a senior tax professional. Then it is the non-search cases. So in the non-search cases, what happens? The cases 48 has been issued. In some cases, the commissioner has set it aside under 263 or 264, or maybe the penny stock case, and ITAT has set aside it to the file of the AO. Then assessment proceedings are pending, or maybe there is some information received from the investigation wing or from the Intelligence and Criminal Investigation Directorate, pointing out that the applicant has inflated the purchases, or applicant has converted his unaccounted income as a wrong bogus capital gains, or maybe it has suppressed its sales, whatever evidence is there, or maybe it is detected in survey. Then they are all no such cases, and there the monetary limit of taxes to be paid is only 10 lakhs, to ascertain that there is no other income to be disclosed. It is also the duty of the tax professional to ensure that there is no other income to be disclosed. There was a case in which the assessee or taxpayer and source of income was not disclosed. Then it was not in knowledge of the department also. So the matter went to the High Court, and High Court held that the duty of the taxpayer or the assessee to disclose his income truly and fully. Even if it was not in knowledge of the department, that is not the case. Before settlement commission, you get only one chance, and the benefit is you get immunity from penalty and prosecution. Your matter is settled within a time frame of 18 months. You have to pay only taxes and interest, and your obligation is to truly correctly your income, which was so far disclosed to the department, manner of earning of income, pay taxes and interest on that. To prepare exhaustive SOF on the basis of all material information, so that no aspect, all aspects of undisclosed income are covered, to ensure that tax and interest calculation is correctly computed, and to rule out any kind of mistake, facts, computation of undisclosed income, manner of deriving income, computation of taxes. Now there are 4 stages of appearance before ITSC, where the representation. First stage is called the admission stage. This is section 245D1. Here, when you file a petition under form 34B, which we discussed, and you also include a detailed statement of facts, which is really a very challenging task to prepare. And there, a senior settlement person, tax professional who is dealing with the settlement commission matters, need to guide you that when SOF is submitted, then within 7 days, a notice will be issued by the commission, and within 14 days, your application will be posted for hearing and disposal will be there. So on the date fixed, you have to explain all. In this particular first hearing before the settlement commission, there is no representation from the side of the department. You have to explain all the facts on behalf of the SSE, and there has to be adequate preparation to submit verification on the bench. Bench will read all statements, everything which you have submitted. You will submit all the P&L account, balance sheet, audited accounts, whatever was submitted earlier to the department, and now your statement of facts. And there are team members are persons who have been part for the last 35, 38 years. They are either chief commissioner or chief commissioner. So they are very senior, very competent. They go through the your stuff and other annexures, and then they raise query in the court. So you should be adequately prepared. It is always better for the tax consultant who is new to always take the help of a senior professional who will also be present there and who will submit all clarifications on the query raised by the bench. Need to know all the facts deeply with regard to the facts stated in the SOP. This is the tax consultant should know each and everything, and all the necessary relevant documents are there taken along with, because the bench asks any query, you should be able to reply. So everything should be ready and fresh in your mind. In case of doubt or any mistake, better to admit and request for rejection. The first stage, if the bench points out some mistake, you should, because then the application can be rejected, and you will have a chance to get the matter admitted again. So first stage, maybe some mistake on a disclosure, on account of manner of earning income not properly explained, or maybe the taxes are not noted. Whatever problem, whatever error is indicated by the bench, we as a tax consultant must gracefully accept it, because there is no loss to us. We can again redraft our application and submit it again for admission, and then again a notice will be issued, and then within 14 days the settlement commission is supposed to dispose of the application by admitting it or rejecting it. After admission, there is a second stage, that is called validity stage, 245D2C. Here what happens when the application is admitted, then now the copy of the entire application, one copy, statement of facts and other details which were submitted before the ITSC, they are forwarded to the Commissioner of Income Tax, who has jurisdiction over the case, and he has to submit a report in Rule 6, under Rule 6, within 30 days of receipt of the letter from the Commission, and then within 15 days that has to be heard by the Commission. When the report is received from the Commissioner, then within 15 days that has to be heard by the Commission. So as soon as the reply of the PCIT is received by the bench or by the Commission, then a copy is given to the assessee, who is called applicant. Then the applicant's tax consultant has to prepare a detailed reply on that report, because there are some objections in the commissioner report. The disclosure is not full and true, or manner has not been explained properly, whatever. And then there is a hearing fixed for that stage 2 hearing, that is validity stage. Now in the hearing, there is a CIT DR, Commissioner of Income Tax DR, like in IT-80, who represents the department side. So who will, on the basis of that report of the commissioner, highlight the objections. So it is the duty of the tax consultant or the professional, listening to the objections, oral submissions of CIT DR, and assessing officer is also present in the hearing before ITSC. So one has to hear to all the objections and all submissions very carefully, and then tax consultant or tax professional has to give oral clarifications, though the reply has already been submitted in writing also. Further oral clarifications have to be submitted on all the objections which were raised by the CITDR or AO before the ITSC. The bench members are there, and we need to explain every point. Sir, there is no substance in the objections raised by the commissioner, and we also give our viewpoint also, our side of picture also. Then there may be some points which are raised by the bench, that these are the gaps, what you have to say. There also we need to make submit proper clarifications and explanation. Therefore, tax consultant has to be very sharp, very attentive, very alert to the facts of the case. And in the search case, they are so tremendous, you have to be really aware of each and every document. In fact, it is advised that all the incriminating documents which are very vital, their copies are to be enclosed along with the statement of facts, because there are a lot of paper books made, and major documents, their photocopies are enclosed there for the perusal of the bench, because there should be no allegation, there should be no ground to believe that the applicant or the tax professional was trying to conceal something from the bench. That will be very, very fatal. Then exercising self-restraint and display of very polite and compliant conduct. Now it is very important here that the finding of the settlement commission is final and binding on both the sides. Only it is not appealable before High Court. Therefore, many times the kind of aggressive argument which is possible before IT-80 is not possible before IT Settlement Commission. IT Settlement Commission has a very much more discretion, and we have to always seek the cooperation of bench. We should never try to offend or annoy the bench through our persistent arguments, because many professionals who are arguing before the IT-80, their tone is sometimes very aggressive, and then it becomes difficult for them to maintain their equilibrium or equanimity before the ITSC, and sometimes that may adversely affect the case of the applicant, because we need to be very, very polite, very, very humble, even when the bench is raising some questions which may not be correct, or bench is trying to take a view which may be unreasonable. But since we have no right to appeal against the finding of the bench, we have to exercise self-restraint, and we try to be very polite. We should not offend the bench at all. Then there is a third stage. Third stage is called 245D3. It is an inquiry stage. This stage is not invalid, it means it's valid. Then the commission, its copy will be sent to the commissioner. Commissioner will send a detailed report under Rule 9 within 45 days, And when that report comes, commissioner many times asks for inquiry, and then there is a hearing for allowing inquiry under section 245d3. This is the third proceeding. So here there will be CITDR who will explain the reasons why inquiry is required, and there will be a written reply by the tax professional in the representation that proposed inquiries are not required because investigation has already done everything, and then CITDR's arguments have to be listened carefully and oral submissions have to be made properly. And then in most of the cases, it is the duty of the AR or the tax consultant to say that inquiry is, because you summon the third parties and it will create a lot of embarrassment. So usually what happens, the commission is also very conservative and would not allow inquiry like calling the third parties, but most of the cases it is confined, inquiry is confined to the verification by the AO with the help of the tax professional, tax consultant, or maybe joint verification to be done by the assessing officer and the director investigation team of the bench. So this should be the reply or representation from the tax consultant should be: inquiry is not necessary, everything is available, and at the most if some verification is needed, so we will assist in the verification, maybe the joint verification, or maybe it can be done at the level of AO, and we will be present there and we will submit all the information, all the data that can be verified, then rendering all necessary information papers in case joint verification is allowed by the bench. Extending cooperation, so if they allowed the inquiry, then it is the duty of the tax consultant to extend full cooperation in the inquiry, and then when the report is submitted by the commissioner gets 90 days time for completing the inquiry. Then the next stage of that is called the final stage, the fourth stage, that is 245d4 stage. So in this 245d4 stage, the commissioner's detailed report, also the inquiry report if inquiry has been conducted, is there. Then the applicant side or taxpayer side, tax professional or tax consultant has to prepare a detailed reply, point-wise reply, dealing with the objections of the principal commissioner. The general objections of the principal commissioner in his report are that the income disclosed is not full and true, the manner of deriving of income is not correctly explained, the tax computations are not correct, there may be certain pages, certain papers, certain incomes have not been disclosed. All kinds of objections are there. Each and every objection raised by the principal commissioner in his report has to be explained in writing. So it is the duty of the tax consultant to submit detailed written reply on the Rule 9 report of the PCIT. Then submitting detailed explanation on the inquiry and verification report. If there is an inquiry report from the commissioner, then again a lot of adverse material they must have gathered and they must have in their inquiry times bring on record the adverse facts, adverse material, challenging the fullness and trueness of the disclosure made. So all those adverse criticism, adverse material or adverse report has to be countered in the written submission. Then here the fourth stage is 1 or 3 of the case. Magnitude and volume of the incriminating documents and the size of the group. So a case may be small or case may be big. So during the course of hearing, the CITDR and the AO are present, and they make oral submission in support of the objections highlighted in the principal CIT's report. Then oral submissions before the bench on the objections in the written report and raised orally. So then uske baad there are oral submissions by the tax consultant to be made dealing with the objections which are there in the written report or which are now raised orally by the CIT-DR. Necessary clarification on points raised by the bench and the DIT. Further, many times certain objections are not there in the report of the PCIT, but the bench members are very sharp. They dig out certain very important, vital and relevant points. So those points need to be clarified at the time of hearing. Sometimes it is found difficult, then the bench may be requested to give time, and then the case can be fixed for hearing or adjourned to some other hearing after the part hearing. In case of some disputed points, willingness to come forward to make may be suggested during the course of hearing. So maybe there are one hearing or two hearing, whatever objections are raised by the department, by CIT-DR, whatever objections are raised or clarifications are sought by the bench, they all are met. All requisite material, information, explanation, written or oral are submitted before the bench, and it may take one hearing, two hearing, three or four hearing also in big cases, and then at last the bench comes to form some opinion, and bench may be of the opinion that though the applicant has made disclosure, but they are and to make further disclosure of maybe 1 crore, 2 crore, 50 lakhs, depending upon the, and usually general trend is that more often this is being accepted from the side of the applicant, and then there is a paper, there is a some letter drafted by the tax consultant that in order to put quietus to the issues, to the disputes, and to finally settle the matter, we further disclose following amount on account of this. That letter is submitted, that is accepted by the bench. Bench makes all its orders. There is a pronouncement in the court itself that the matter is settled by making addition of 1 crore, 2 crore, 4 crores, and then the bench, there is a request from the tax consultant on the immunities, that is penalty and prosecution. There is also request for grant of installment, and then there is a request for capitalization of income disclosed, and the bench gives their finding in the open court about that also. And all those are accepted, and subsequently an order of the settlement commission under section 45 has that order, and then that order settles the matter. Now these are the powers of settlement commission. From the date of filing of application, settlement commission having exclusive jurisdiction to exercise powers and perform the functions of IT authority. So once your application is submitted before the commission, the ITO cannot issue any notice, cannot conduct any inquiry to have decision over your case. In case assessee has cooperated with the commission in the proceedings and disclosed full and true income, commission will grant or may grant immunity from penalty and prosecution. However, immunity may not be granted if proceedings for prosecutions have been initiated by department prior to the application. If there is some pending prosecution proceedings before the application, then it is not possible for the commission to grant immunity with regard to that proceeding. Immunity granted can be withdrawn also if applicant fails to pay further sum specified in the order under section 245D4 within the due date, because there is a time given for payment of installment that has to be adhered to or the assessee should make further request to the commission to extend that time. Or if it is found that the applicant had concealed any material information or had submitted any false evidence before the commission, then also the immunity can be withdrawn. Then, as I have told, that every order of settlement commission is conclusive as to the matters stated therein, and no matter covered by such order can be challenged under any other law in force. Matter covered by settlement commission orders cannot be reopened in any proceeding under the IT Act or under any other law for the time being in force. Orders of settlement commission are not appealable, means no appeal lies before High Court. However, only writ can be filed before High Court. The court is concerned with the legality of the procedure adopted and not with the validity of the order. Like decision-making process can be examined by the court, that if some procedure has not been complied with or natural justice principles have not been obeyed, the court may restore it to the file of the settlement commission. But what decision has been taken by the settlement commission on merit, that cannot be questioned, that cannot be reviewed. Provisions of settlement are in nature of statutory arbitration, hence there is no review on the ground that decision is erroneous on merits. Then there is a courtroom procedure. This is very simple, in which what happens that as you adopt the procedure before ITAT, the same way there is a courtroom procedure before the settlement commission. In the ITAT there are 2 members or 1 member, here there are 3 members. So court should be addressed as Your Honor, court, commission, or sir. All documents should be submitted in 7 copies, because there are for 3 members, 1 for DI, 1 for secretary, 1 for the department. Like this, 7 sets are to be stated of each paper of statement text, so that it passed on. Then applicant, AR and DR and AO should speak only when they are so indicated by the bench. They must stand up and face the bench. They should not converse among themselves or with the opposite party or exchange any evidence such as documents. That is, they should maintain the decorum. Use of unparliamentary or abusive language or slangs in the court is prohibited, that everybody of us know. Then dress regulation, advocates as per Bar Council of India, chartered accountants recommended by the ICAI, other AR and DR, they should be sent, male in a suit with a tie or trouser, female coat shall be of dark shade. This is all. And the court may direct any person to leave court if due courtroom procedure is not followed by that person. And then I have also given my number and my mail only for the reason that there are maybe some queries, because the settlement commission matter is a little private and confidential. So sometimes anybody wants any kind of evidence, any kind of help, mentoring or guidance, so he can ring me, or he can hcj.advisor@gmail.com. So they can just do any kind of seek any kind of guidance. And now I think we have had a sufficient time. Now have any questions or any queries? If they are in the chat box, we can see, and I can just deal with them. Thank you.
Yeah, we can take some questions. In the meanwhile, speaker for next session, CA Jayesh Kariya has also joined. Jayesh, we welcome you.
We have around 5 to 10 minutes, so I can deal with some queries.
Yes, we Mishra ji, if there is any queries in the chat box, please intimate.
Sir, queries nahi hai.
Okay. So I think we have taken a.
Sir, अभी आया है, 2 query है अभी, मैं देता हूँ.
Session on settlement commission earlier also, and this was more representation. So might be there. Okay, please let me know. Can you?
मिश्रा जी क्वेरीज दे रहे हो ना आप?
हाँ सर दे रहे हैं.
Okay.
Yes, Jain sir, these are the queries.
No, the first question is whether in settlement commission assessment for third person be opened. No, it cannot be opened. Your query is not clear. If you want to ask that on the basis of the order of settlement commission, whether any case of a third person can be reopened, not to my knowledge. But sometimes if department becomes proactive, so department has all the incriminating documents. It will not be on account of the finding of the settlement commission. Settlement commission will never give any finding with regard to the third party. So no case can be reopened on the basis of the order of the settlement commission. How can we decide that going to settlement commission is better? It can be only evaluated or assessed by a senior professional who is dealing with settlement commission matters, because he will tell you that in the normal course these will be the likely revenue implications, and in the search and seizure cases more often than not it is always better to go to the settlement commission, because there is a sufficient incriminating documents and penalties etc. are going to be initiated, or it may be a case for prosecution also, or utilization. So there is adjustment of income against the assets. So in a majority of cases, particularly search and seizure and survey, and when there is some information on the basis of which it is beyond doubt that you have concealed the income, it will be better to approach the settlement commission. You get only one time in the entire life, you get only one opportunity to approach the settlement commission, and the benefits are so immense that generally in 80% of the cases when you go to consult, you will find that better going to the settlement commission would be better. Okay. Any other questions?
नहीं sir.
Okay, then it's okay.
Yes, sir. It was indeed a great session, and आपने जो पूरा in depth में process of settlement commission and how can we really take benefit of settlement commission, the process involved, the entire spectrum of settlement commission has been discussed by you in length. I'm sure the participants across this webinar must have definitely got very good insight on the subject. I would request Shri Utkash Sarma, Chartered Accountant, coordinator for this program, to kindly propose a formal vote of thanks to Dr. H.C. Jain, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the entire WRC team for organizing this refresher course on representation skills. Considering the latest changes that are coming in this arena with the faceless assessments and other aspects. For Mr. H.C. Jain, sir, I'll keep it extremely brief. Sir, you have exhaustively explained to us the role of chartered accountants or tax consultants in in search cases, as well as in Itsc, not only from the documentation perspective, but also from our conduct perspective, also the nuances of approaching the Itsc will help the chartered accountants to look at this option as well while handling the search cases. So on behalf of everyone, I would like to extend a very hearty vote of thanks to you, sir, for explaining us the role of chartered accountants in search and ITSC cases. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Itsc Jain, sir.
Thank you so much, Jayesh, and thank you all the organizers. I am also very glad to interact with all the participants, and I am also part of fraternity. So always, thank you so much. Okay.
Sure, sir. We will definitely take your services and advice in future also.
Yes.
Now, coming to second section, we have technical aspects relating to virtual and faceless representation by CA Jayesh Kariya ji. Jayesh ji, we welcome you, and we welcome our past chairman CA Preeti Savla ji. And I would request CA Preeti Savla ji to kindly give a brief introduction for Mr. Jayesh Kariya ji.
Thank you, Jayesh bhai, past Vikasa chairman and regional council member who has a direct tax committee chairman who has structured a main role in structuring this series. And coming to I hope everyone is safe and safe in this COVID period, and wish for safety for everyone, and wish that in coming times sooner we are out of this pandemic. So coming down to the introduction part, so as such, office has mailed me the introduction of CA Jayesh Kariya, but honestly, let me tell you, all friends, as such for Jayesh bhai, I don't require any introduction to be mailed. I know him very well, and since last various years. So, and his contribution to the institute and specifically to WIRC, whether it is at Mumbai Western region or any branches, so he is always available and very always eagerly and positively contributing for the benefit of members. So Jayesh, very happy to you over here online platform, and I am sure with your great knowledge and exposure, the members will be immensely benefited. And for the benefit of all the members, I will also go through the introduction, formal introduction, which has been provided. So friends, Jayesh Kariya ji has over 25 years of professional experience in Big Four consulting in India. He is serving plans in areas of cross-border taxation, cross-border investments, and business structuring, exchange control regulations, regulatory aspects, mergers and business relations. In strategy for global and Indian infrastructure companies, construction companies, EPC, global developers, Indian developers. He has developed a significant experience in strategizing and implementing business solutions, including business strategies, funding strategies, and business reorganization from clients from various sectors. He advises and assists in large Indian and foreign multinational companies engaged in business of infra, healthcare, hospitality, defense, power, oil and gas, transport and logistics, real estate and construction, airports and water treatment, etc. So if I am not wrong, Jayesh bhai has taken various sessions on real estate, even after the RERA has been implemented in last several years at WIRC. He advises large clients in execution of EPC contracts, SCZ projects, construction developments, projects, infra projects, including cross-border projects, portfolio investment strategies, and obtaining complex tax and regulatory approvals. He advises clients and funds in setting up REITs and infrastructure in India as well as Singapore, assist in establishing and supporting large PE funds, VC funds, AIF, in entity structuring, investment structuring, and exit strategies. He assists clients in funding and fundraising strategies. He assists several multinationals setting up their operations in India, obtaining various approvals and registration advised on several regulations, tax incentives supported on regulatory aspects. He also assists in large Indian companies and MNCs in making representations before government, policy makers, CBDT, regulatory authorities, RBI and SEBI, etc. Assists in client in litigation strategies, representing large tax litigation matters before various authorities, and he acts as a lead partner on various accounts and supporting the client in various business areas. He frequently lectures and writes articles on cross-border taxation, real estate, construction, contract structuring, life cycle of investment in real estate, infrastructure sector, cross-border investments and cross-border transactions. He frequently is invited by Nagpur Academy of Income Tax Department for providing training to IRS officers on subjects of tax, international taxation, dispute resolution under international tax laws, and the DTAA, and also by various organizations like RBI, FICCI, CREDAI, NAREDCO, MCHI, CFI, BCA, ICI, CTC, ICSI, Construction Federation, IFA, BCA, and the list is so long and long. It will, I don't have to take the session on profile, I think. And 13th August.
I was about to tell you, Prithiben, I think it's a long. Now, what I will do next time, I'll make it very short so that it saves time of everyone. Thank you so much for an elaborate.
13th August, the government has announced this faceless assessment scheme, and we are here. We have here Jayesh Bhai to deliberate on that. So, welcome, Jayesh Bhai. Welcome to WIRs.
Thank you very much. So may I request someone to just put up the presentation? So while the presentation is being put up, this is my, I would say, another opportunity to talk to WRC. I remember on 18th February, Preeti, when you had invited me to talk about in early days on the faceless assessment scheme. Now I think is a time that the faceless assessment scheme has become the reality and has transformed, I would say, the profession for all of us. And we need to, I would say, take this as a very big opportunity for all of us, because this is not going to come again in our lifetime. So therefore, I recommend and I request all the professionals to take this as the one of the lifetime opportunity to make their fortune. Now, the journey of, I would say, the digitization has started somewhere long ago in 2006, when the first time the tax return has been introduced in 2006. But I would say the real momentum started when the PM Narendra Modi government started the Digital India movement, and then we saw that a lot of functions in the government has been digitized, whether it is SEBI, whether it is NCA, whether it is the tax authorities, or whether it is Aadhaar card, and so many, I would say, functions have been digitized. And the story of, I would say, the faceless assessment or e-assessment started in 2015. The seeds were sown in 2015, but the real impetus was started in 2018 budget, when the faceless assessment scheme, or the framework for the faceless assessment scheme, was being rolled out by the Prime Minister, by the Finance Minister. Then we saw and we started, I would say, acquainting ourselves in participating in the e-assessment, I would say the assessment processes. But at the same time, it was what we call it as a fungible. We were also able to not only make the submissions online, but we also had an opportunity of making submissions offline, and also had an opportunity of discussing our point of view with the tax authorities and explaining their point of view. So it was more of a hybrid system. But effective from 13th August 2020, when the Finance Minister, when the Prime Minister formally rolled out this scheme, which is a complete automated system of the faceless assessment, and it has actually moved away from the e-assessment from 13th August, and now we are on the complete automated faceless assessment scheme from 13th August 2020. Now, since then, we have seen, I would say, so many changes as far as these the constitutions or the framework or the legislations or the administrative organization setup is to be considered. We have seen a lot of notifications and a lot of, I would say, the guidelines that have been issued by the CBDT, and that is helping. A lot of work has been done by the CBDT. In fact, this time the Finance Ministry and the CBDT is better prepared, and I would say more prepared, like GST regime, than many of us. So therefore, it is I would say very important for all the chartered accountants or all the consultants to gear up and put the house in order so they are able to serve our clients in the effective and the best possible manner. May I request, I would say, to put up the presentation. So if you look at the journey of digitization I would say,
Present should be shared by you only, Jayesh bhai.
Okay, I have to share.
Yes, sharing rights
Okay.
दिया है ना?
हाँ मैम दिया है.
Okay, so okay, I'm doing it for the first time. So let me just see.
Show my screen.
Show my screen. Okay.
Click on that.
Yes. Okay. This is the one. Right. Can you see the presentation?
No.
Still not.
No.
Okay. Just 1 minute. Can you see now? Is it possible to see the presentation now?
No, it is not coming, sir. Your webcam is also off now.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Now, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Now you can see the presentation, right? Okay, great. So let me navigate. So as I said, the Digital India movement and started with various, I would say, initiatives taken by the government. And I also talked about the journey from 2006 when we had the first e-assessment, first written filing that started in 2006. In fact, we are ahead of the US and we successfully moved all the way from 2016 to 2020. And we are able to, I would say, complete the assessment or complete the written filing and everything even at midnight, 12 o'clock. So that's, I would say, the beauty of the automation or the digitization that happened in our life. Now, if you look at the landscape, what basis my analysis and my study, that it has divided into the 4 pillars, and not only around the assessment. This is very important because the faceless assessment fold into all these, I would say, the pillars. So therefore, let me just take you to the 4 pillars. The one is, the pillar is what we call it as a project insight, which is a big data analysis that the government started. The second one, the phase was more of a pillar, was the data exchange, when the department started the initiative of exchanging the data between the RBI, between the SEBI and the tax authorities, between the GST authorities and the tax authorities, and also signing various agreements with the government. So that is the second phase. The third phase is what we started with the e-assessment. And the fourth pillar that we saw is the virtual hearing that we saw, whether it is a CIT appeal hearing or whether it is IT hearing. So you would have heard in the project inside what has happened, that the government started collecting the data from the various sources, whether you're from your bank account, whether your large transactions, whether your banking transactions, whether your credit card transactions, whether your overseas travel transactions. So all these data is being will be collected. And at the time of assessment, you are given an AR report. In basis that report, the questions are being asked about whether the income has been offered or whether the expenditure has been incurred, and so on and so forth. At the same time, the government has also started tying up with various, I would say, the agencies to collect the data, and started creating a profile of the companies or the profile of the taxpayers to ascertain that how the SSC is offering the income, what kind of income is being what you call it as the offered to tax, and depending on their spending profile, whether the income is being offered or not. And this initiative is basically to increase or expand the what you call it as the base of the taxation. So this is very important because when we are into a faceless assessment, all these, I would say, the project insight which has been started by the government will be used while doing the faceless assessment, and we may not be aware. So therefore, it is very important that we have to discuss with our clients that this information or these, I would say, the pattern will go as the data and will be used at the time of the faceless assessment. The next wave was what we call the pillar is the data exchange. And as I said, that the government started exchanging the data across various authorities, whether it is a central board of direct taxes, whether it is SEBI, whether it is RBI. And the government also started negotiating the tax treaties by incorporating the exchange of information in the tax treaties, and also signed the FEDCA and other, I would say, the exchange related information with the various countries. And also another wave that we saw under the BEPS, which was a CIC, whereby the multinationals are also required to give not only the information about the taxpayer entity, but also about the entire global MNC entities. Not only about the activities carried out in India, but also about the activities which are carried out by the MNC globally and by their various entities. So this is again a second wave that came, and that is very relevant for the faceless assessment. So all the data collected in this will go into what we call it as a big, I would say, the pot, and there is going to be a data analytics. The government has already equipped itself by putting the artificial intelligence, and both our Prime Minister and Finance Minister has talked about use of the robotic technology, use of the artificial intelligence, use of big data analytics, and so on and so forth, to identify or unearth what you call it as the unaccounted money or unaccounted income, and thereby increasing the tax base, or also making the assessment more focused, more sharper, and more income oriented for the government. Then the next wave started. So that was just, I would say, the journey. So that was the second phase of the journey. With that, we also started, as I said, that the e-assessment started somewhere in 2018. But then this third wave came, which is faceless assessment, which has been formally announced on 13th August 2020 by the Prime Minister. And as I said, that a lot of action has been taken by the government to make it operational, successful, and meaningful, not only for the tax authorities, but also for the taxpayers. So a lot of, I would say, the efforts. For the first time, I've seen that the principal CIT, Mr. Patanjali, and the entire team has been coming all the way and have been forthright in taking all the members and all the, I would say, the stakeholders about what is stored in the scheme. And they are also, like any other business administrators, that they are also trying to transform. They are also trying to make out or give a very clear and loud message that we are here to help you, we are here to support you. So that kind of, I would say, drive we have never seen in the past. So this is really a very good, I would say, initiative that has been taken by the government. And we have seen on the back of it, a lot of, I would say, the programs that have been organized by various associations, including WRC, where we saw Mr. Patanjali explaining the provisions along with his team. So this was the third phase. The fourth phase, again, I think is what you call it as the positive side of the COVID, that we saw that all the courtrooms and all, I would say, the dingy corridors got converted into the fancy, nice courtrooms. So we saw that this is another wave where the judiciary wanted that the machinery should not stop, the judicial machinery should not stop. And we saw that the online, I would say, the faceless hearing or the online or virtual hearing became the reality. There were apprehensions in the mind of both the authorities and the taxpayers, including the tax consultants or the representatives. But I think all the, I would say, the fear or the myth or the I would say, the worries have been completely dispelled, and we have seen that all these, I would say, the judiciary, whether it is tribunal, whether it is high court, or whether it is Supreme Court, have functioned seamlessly and delivered the desired, I would say, the outcome or the desired judgments. In fact, the Supreme Court delivered almost 15,000 plus cases as part of the virtual assessment. And most of the tribunal and the Supreme Court and High Court gave detailed SOP guidelines as to how to conduct these virtual assessments, and the detailed guidelines were given both for the authorities, including the judicial authorities, including the administrative authorities, and the taxpayers and the representatives. So that has been, I would say, imbibed by all the stakeholders and have been a successful journey thus far. While we are seeing that there are some, I would say, the representations are being made to go back to the physical hearing, but the government seems to be determined to use both the what you call it as a virtual hearing platform, because that is very effective, and possibly the government would open up the physical hearing only for, I would say, the limited complex cases, so as to make sure that we are able to manage not only the COVID situation, but we are able to achieve the objective of what you call it as the faceless assessment, and thereby remove what you call it as the subjectivity, remove the arbitrariness, make it more efficient, remove all other corrupt practices or the malpractices which are in existence in the system. So all these, I would say, the objectives would be achieved through this 4 pillars which the government. Now, I dare to say that this initiative is not going to stop here. I see that we are moving towards the Western countries, and possibly, mark my words, in the next 5 years, possibly the government, with the use of all these data and with the use of all these technology, the government would move to what you call it as not the scrutiny, but would move to the spatial audit or move to the audit, as is happening in the Western countries, that the government would identify and select the companies and the cases and would do a detailed audit for the next 5 years or the next 10 years audit, and then come out with the specific findings and do the audit. So I would say in the next 5 years, possibly we'll see that that will be the reality of the, I would say, the world for the assessment is concerned. So that's where we are moving, and that's where again we have another opportunity to serve our clients. Now, if you look at it, the technical aspects of the representation. So while Gautam did take you through, so I'm not going to take you through in detail about the scheme, but while in my presentation, I'm going to cover some of these, I would say, the technical aspects. But what I thought that maybe not to cover in much detail about what are the, I would say, the step-by-step and also the provisions, which Gautam has explained you people in more detail. So I'm not taking that time. But given the topic, I'm going to talk about more on the practical experience. I'm going to talk about the different stages under which we have to, I would say, prepare ourselves and also prepare our clients to deal with the faceless assessment and serve the clients in the most effective manner as far as the faceless assessment is concerned, and also help our client to deliver the desired results. So with this, let me take you through the journey of what are the technical aspects of the representations under FAS, which is the Faceless Assessment Scheme. Now, as I see, again, I see this to be a 4-stage approach as opposed to a centric approach of the what you call it as the Faceless Assessment Scheme. The journey does not begin on the receipt of the notice, but I think the journey for all of us begins much ahead of the notice. So that's what I thought of and designed the structure, which is called a 4-stage approach, which is a pre-assessment preparedness, which is very, very important. So you have to actively start engaging with your clients and preparing for the assessment journey, not for the assessment year 2018, 19, 19, 20, but for the going forward. Then we have a next stage where we'll be moving, which is the actual assessment. That means the journey begins when we receive the client receives the notice from the NESE, and that is managing that process. So there we need to be very clear about in terms of our understanding of the nitty-gritties of the scheme, what are the nut and bolts of the scheme, and what are the, I would say, the opportunities for us to, I would say, make the most out of the scheme. And more importantly, is a deep technical knowledge and the expertise. This is very much important, because I see that if you look at this I would say the whole scheme or whole, I would say, the journey of faceless assessment or digitization, I see as more of a 3I. So I see this as a 3I. The first I to my mind is an information. So there is a lot of trust on the quality data or the information. So there is an information which is gathered from all the sources, and then what you call it as the big data and the artificial intelligence being applied onto it to make a meaningful assessment and to make a meaningful inquiry. So that is information is what you call it as the engine oil as far as this approach of digital taxation is concerned. The second one is concerned is what you call it as the infrastructure. So a lot of trust is on the infrastructure, both for the administrator and for the taxpayer and for the tax advisor. So the infrastructure will play a very important role. Therefore, we, as all of us, will have to, I would say, embrace the technology and become a tax savvy. So that is very important, because earlier we were more dependent on what we call it as our lot of soft skills. And Gautam, I know that he's talked about the soft skill in the context of faceless assessment, but I talk about the soft skill in terms of our ability to make a representations, oral representations, how you're coordinating with the tax authorities, your networking skills, and your, I would say, the abilities to get your things done from the revenue authorities. But those, I think, has no, I would not say it's completely gone away, because we still have a post-assessment process where we still would require those skills. But I think that has got diluted as far as the faceless assessment is concerned. And possibly in the post-assessment also, these networking skills or your personal representation skills could go down. But that doesn't mean that that is going to go west. Obviously, that all the skills would be available and useful to us when we get to the fourth phase, which is the faceless assessment appeals and the faceless representations to be made to the revenue authorities or the adjudicating authorities. The third stage, to my mind, is the post-assessment stage. Again, this is right now hybrid, but slowly, this is also going to be more a faceless or an automated process. So therefore, again, here also we need to have a clear understanding of the process, and again, a deep technical knowledge and the professional aspect. We need to be very professional in our approach, and we cannot, I would say, be very liberal in our approach, or I would say very loose approach that we can adopt when we are talking with the tax authorities. And the last one is a faceless assessment or faceless representations and appeal, which is a virtual hearing. So here again, we need to, as I said, that we need to refresh our representation skills, and we need to be tech savvy or tech enabled so that we are able to make effective representation. Now, coming back to the pre-assessment stage, as I said, that the knowledge of the taxpayers industry is very important, because here we were not, I would say, paying much attention, but now we have to pay very much attention to understand what the client is into business, what are the nitty-gritties of the business, what the industry, what are the sources of information, how his technologies, whether his technologies is enabled to provide the required data on a timely manner, whether his technology is connected with. So a lot of things I would say you need to understand as far as the client is concerned. You need to proactively engage with the taxpayers and the tax matters, because now the things are changing, the stakes are getting much higher. So you have to have a proactive engagement and not a reactive engagement. Not that the notice will come and then they will engage with the client. You need to be more proactive, inform the clients on what are the developments which are happening, both on the domestic taxation front, international taxation front, on the faceless assessment of the digital journey, and how client needs to ring fence, how the client need to manage what you call it as the his, I would say, the database and also his resources in such a manner that he is able to manage these affairs in the more meaningful and more efficient manner without getting adversely impacted from the taxation positions. Then advising the tax on the tax positions with respect to important transactions on a proactive basis. So you need to talk to client. This is again an opportunity to engage with the client to say that if you are doing some transactions, if you are taking any acquisitions, if you are doing anything else, then please consult us, because if you take a particular position or if you file certain documentation in your parties with an understanding that it will not come to the knowledge of anybody, so that those days are gone. So therefore you need to engage them, you need to win the trust of the client and actually build your journey or start your journey from there onwards. Then you also need to what you call it do a pre-finalization of the review of the financials, because what is happening that many a times we are caught unaware that the client has written a lot of things, or the auditor has made certain, I would say, statements or qualifications, and those, if are not, I would say, reviewed by the consultant, then possibly it becomes difficult at the time of faceless assessment, or whether it is a normal assessment to defend. So therefore, that is very important. Before I would say the tax returns or the tax audit or a tax planning report, all these things are being finalized, you need to engage with clients and tell them this needs to be reviewed, so that, because now what is happening that the 26 A's has completely transformed. So all the data goes into and will be given into you for filing the return. So therefore, a lot of information is available. Even like take an example, tax audit report is again completely transformed and has been made more exhaustive to cope up with the faceless assessment. So therefore, the tax authorities do not have to ask much information. A lot of information is available to them. Basically, the tax audit report, transfer pricing report, C by C report, and various other reports that is going to be generated, and also through the exchange of information by various authorities. Therefore, here we need to again tell the client that this is not a journey when you receive the notice, but the journey starts before the notice. So therefore, you need to engage and help them to prepare, because this document becomes a part of the documentation when we have to, I would say, represent before the faceless assessment. So if we are a part of the journey with our clients from the beginning itself, then I think the faceless assessment becomes more smoother, more efficient, and more, I would say, fruitful for both for the tax authorities and the taxpayers. Then nowadays we are seeing that there is a lot of reconciliation is being insisted upon by the tax authorities, and I say talked about 26 years. So therefore, before the return is being prepared, I think we need to tell the client to reconcile the things and not wait for the notice it comes, because what will happen that now in the faceless assessment, efficiency is one of the important aspects. So not much time would be provided, and you would be expected to respond to the notice within 15 days. Yes, some time would be given, but if you take more adjournment, then it will, I would say, impact the profile of the tax authorities, and could also impact the profile of the tax representative who is taking the adjournment. So the government is tracking both the taxpayer as well as the tax consultants. Then we also need to, what happens with the client, we have seen the cases whereby accounts are being done, audit is completed, tax audit is completed, return is filed, and everything is hunky-dory. People don't bother to maintain the documentation right up front. And when the notice comes after 1.5 years, and when the assessment journey starts, at that time the realization happens that the documentation are not in order, or the people managing the documentation or who have managed the affairs are no longer with the organization. And that's where the real challenge starts. Therefore, if we have to help our clients in this journey of faceless assessment, then I think it is important that we educate our client on maintaining important documents right up front when the return or while the return is being filed. So just like we do on a transfer pricing documentation, which is a concurrent documentation, similarly here also, we need to guide, we need to educate, and we need to, I would say, take the client through this process and help them to put all this documentation in place the moment the return is being filed. And also, we have to help the client to identify what are the different issues that could come up in the assessment. What are the questions that will be asked? We also do what we call it as the analysis of the various ratios and compare that what was there in the last year, what was not there in the current year, how the gross profit ratio, net profit ratio, stock, and those things have changed. So therefore, we need to keep those things ready and inform the client that these questions would come in the assessment proceedings, considering your profile, considering your taxable income, considering your transactions, and so on and so forth. So that actually helps a client and a consultant to represent very smoothly and in a very seamless manner. So therefore, identifying proactively the issues, preparing the what we call it as the submissions accordingly, and also keeping the documentation ready. So our half of the work is done when we actually go to the next stage of what we call it as the faceless assessment. Now, Gautam has taken you through, so I'm not going to take you through this, but I think one of the important aspects of this faceless assessment is a dynamic jurisdiction. So you don't know who your jurisdictional assessing officer is, and therefore it will be completely run centrally and regionally by the NESE and RESE. And it is a team-based approach. So therefore, you don't know who is your assessing officer. You don't understand the mindset. So it's a dark box to my mind. And therefore, you need to be more intellectual. You need to be, as I said, my 3I, it is intellectual. You need to start imagining. You need to start understanding the, I would say, what kind of officer would be, what could be their profiles. This is whatever the intellectual that we have. And that's where I would say the whole, I would say the change or a transformation will come in our approach as far as the assessment is concerned. I did talk about the interdepartmental data exchange, so therefore one need to be very careful because the data you never know. It's like a Mahabharata when it was going on, it was being fought. You never know where the arrows are coming from, and therefore like Arjun had to protect, and there yes we had Parth with Arjun to protect him, to guide him. So similarly, our clients would be attacked through various sources, and therefore like path, we have to act as a path for the client and help the client to see to it that they are not, I would say, adversely impacted by the information that comes from the various sources, and also that information is not utilized against our client in a very detrimental manner. So therefore, this is what it is. Now, if you ask me that, is there any significant change in what we have been doing and what we will be doing in the faceless assessment? The answer is yes and no. Now, the life, I would say, fundamentally the life has not changed as what we used to do. So instead of like, as we are like talking, I would have made a presentation in front of all of you in the auditorium. Instead, I'm making an effective presentation for all of you through the webcam. So similarly, there also, I would say that we'll have to make the same presentation. But only thing that our approach has to be transformed. And as I said, that our approach has to be centric 3I, i.e. the information, intellectual, and the infrastructure. So we need to, I would say, be very strong or strengthen the way that we have learned in COVID, that we have to strengthen our immunity to fight. So similarly here also, we need to strengthen our 3I so that we are able to serve our clients in the most effective manner. Now, if you look at the scheme as Gautam did explain to you, we have, I would say, the two agencies would be actually monitoring the entire process, or what you call it as the administering the entire process. And the one is the Itsc, which is the National Assessment Center, which acts as a nodal agency and a single point of contact. So we'll not be able to contact with our existing officer as the faceless assessment starts. So we don't know. And even assuming that we have a connect with our jurisdictional assessing officer for various reasons, whether it is assessment, whether it is for the rectification, whether it is order giving effective order, or whether it is the remand report, or whether it is for demand stay, or whether it is for the other areas which are not covered by the faceless assessment, then we have connect in some or the other manner. But as far as the faceless assessment scheme is concerned, we have only one point of contact, which is the NESE. So all assessments now will be carried out, as Gautam explained, by the REAC, the Regional E-Assessment Centers. And within that, we have 4 units, which is called the Assessment Unit, Verification Unit, Review Unit, and the Technical Unit. So these are what we call is that in the Darbar of Akbar, we had Navratna. So these are the 4 Ratnas that is there in the Darbar of NESE and REAC. And they would be the one who would, I would say, decide your fate and our client's fate. So therefore, we need to understand this very, very carefully. As I said, the jurisdictional officer will continue to function, but again, there also the thrust is more on a faceless basis, an electronic basis, rather than on the personal basis. So some cases, yes, we'll have personal, but not all the cases. And then we have the what do you call it as the as I said, there's a complete virtual world. We don't know what is happening behind us, but we need to use, I would say, our sixth sense, our intellectual, to understand what is the profile of the officers who have been transferred, because that is at least the transparent that who has been, I would say, which officer has been nominated where and all that. So therefore, we know some information about it. So we know what is the profile of that officer. We know what kind of, I would say, the training that he has undergone thus far. What is his experience? So basis that we need to start thinking about that what kind of questions that will be asked to us and how we have to respond, how the technical unit is going to function, how the verification unit is going to function, what is the interplay between the two. So that is very important. And finally, it's a team-based assessment. So therefore, as I said, the subjectivity will completely go away. The quality of the assessment would be far, far better. So therefore, I would say a lot of clarifications that have been provided by the administrators, so that chances of mistakes would be far, far lower. So therefore, you would not have an opportunity, or you would not have a grievance that there are some mistakes in the order. There is, I would say, reassessment needs to be done, 147 to be issued, or 263 should be exercised, so on and so forth. So all those things, I would say, will get, I would say, will get away, and possibly the quality of the assessment would be far better. And similarly, that means when the quality of the assessment is far, far better, that means the quality of our submission, the quality of our approach has to be 10 times better than the approach of the tax authorities if we really have to make this more effective and more successful, I would say, the process for our clients and for ourselves. So this is the ecosystem that I talked about. There is no interface. You don't know. You have to interact through the portal, e-assessment portal and the ITBA portal. Yes, there are more and more means would be added, which will like a 24-hour helpline. Email IDs would be provided, and so on and so forth. But obviously, will not be, I would say, expected. We will not be encouraged to go to the tax authorities. Nor I would say the tax authorities would be encouraged to call you or to reach out to you and ask for information which are not authorized, and they are not supposed to talk about things which they are not authorized. So it is a both way that we have to, I would say, maintain the discipline and maintain the protocol. And I talked about these 4 units. Let's just look at the functions, because as I said that in my stage 1 approach or stage 2 approach, we need to be we need to know the nut and bolts. We need to know the process. We need to know who is doing what are their roles, responsibilities, what are their powers, what is the profile, and so on and so forth. So NESE, while is basically a coordinating agency, will be framing the rules and regulations, which will be maintaining infrastructure, will be, I would say, administering the entire process between the faceless assessment jurisdiction officers and the outside the faceless assessment jurisdiction. So that coordination also would be done by NESE. And law internal coordination, which is the movement of data, movement of documents between these 4 units, would also be monitored by the NESE. And therefore, NESE is not going to be playing any technical role or technical function, but is going to play more a role of an administrative function. But that role is very powerful, very meaningful, and very effective role. As far as the RESEs are concerned, we have heard that almost 2/3 of the staff, almost some 3,000 officers have been transferred to RESE, and different structure has been organized. So we'll have a principal CIT, we have the additional commissioners below that, we'll have the deputy commissioners and the joint commissioner below that, and we have the ITOs. And each of the RESE will have 3 to 4 additional commissioners and 20, I would say, the ITOs to support. So therefore, each of these, I would say, the units will be empowered or will be, I would say, designated with various officers who have the relevant experience. And I would say a lot of work has been done by the department in selecting these officers. And these are all bright officers which have been selected in this. So therefore, we are going to, I would say, have a very good time or very intellectual interaction with the tax authorities. So these are the 4 units. Assessment unit, which the job is to do the assessment. Now it is fungible. It also says that your jurisdictional officer may not be your assessing unit, or possibly in the entire process, the order passed by one assessing unit can also be given for review to the another assessing units if the review unit recommends so. So therefore, possibly a revised order could be looked at by the other assessment units. The verification job is basically to verify the data which has been provided. They will also do examination of the books of account. They will also do the examination of the witness under 131 and so on and so forth. And they will also record the statements under 133 inquiries and then so on and so forth. So that's the job of a verification unit. The verification unit will not pass the assessment order, but obviously the assessment will be passed by the assessment unit, but verification unit will have its own inputs before the assessment order being passed. The technical unit is the heart of the entire, I would say, the process. They would be, I would say, providing support to the assessment unit on the legal aspects, accounting aspect, forensic aspect, the valuation aspect. They will also be doing transcribing. So some of the transcribing officers are being transferred to the TU unit. They will also be managing the, I would say, the data analytics. They will also be doing other technical support. And this technical unit is designed and is also, my understanding, is being also worked out by the industry specific leaders have been identified, and the industry specific issues are being identified by this technical unit. And this technical unit would be taking the universal position which will be applicable to various, I would say, the taxpayers in that industry or in that business or in that function. So therefore, this unit would be very important in framing what we call it as the, I would say, the quality of the assessment or the assessment issues that will come up in the, I would say, the years to come. So therefore, the technical unit is going to play a very important role. And then, since the one of the important role which has been given to NESE, which is a risk management, to ensure that there are no biases and there are balanced assessment that is happening. So therefore, a review unit has been crafted. So therefore, the purpose is to say that there is no subjectivity, there is no bias, there are no high-risk assessments, and there are quality assessments while it is being done through the use of the verification unit, technical unit. But still, the order needs to be reviewed by the review unit. And a question is that all orders will be reviewed by the unit. Answer is no. It is a decision that the NESE will take whether which kind of order. But certainly all the high pitch or what you call it, the complex assessment would be reviewed by the review unit. So therefore there are enough balance and checks available. So there are certain, I would say, the evidences which are being gathered by the verification unit or the technical unit has taken a position. So therefore the review unit is basically more of what you call it as the strategic input that they will give, or basically they are more in the form of a role of an arbitrator that they will do, so that they are able to review the, I would say, the position that is being taken by the assessment unit. And they will at the same time will also do the verification of the order, the numbers, calculations, and all those things. But in this whole process, the beauty is that it is a team-based assessment. But as you see the, I would say, the guidelines which have been provided by the faceless assessment, there are 4 opportunities which are available, or 4 times review that happens. And there are 4, I would say, the opportunities are available to the taxpayers for, I would say, providing its position, for defending its position. So there is a first draft order, then there is a revised draft, there is a final draft order, there is a revised draft order, and then finally there is a personal hearing. So there are 4 stages whereby we, or a taxpayer, will have an opportunity to make a point. This I will not get into, but this is the construct of the, I would say, the framework of the faceless assessment, how the things will move from the notice stage. The NESE will issue the notice to the taxpayers, and from that notice, obviously, the submissions will be made, and on the way, this chart actually depicts how the data would move between various units when the data is being provided. While this is, I would say, the schematic diagram which is available to us, but we will not have the ability, we will not have a preview of the movie, we will not have a preview of the serial on the Netflix that we'll be able to see how the assessment is going on. We don't know where our files are moving. We don't know where it is lying with the review unit, which review unit, whether our case, we are in Bombay, our case is being done by in somewhere in Rajasthan or somewhere in Chhattisgarh. So we don't know where the technical unit is sitting. So this is all, as I said, it's a dark box. So therefore, we need to be very mindful, very careful when we provide our details, when we provide submissions to I would say, the tax authorities as part of the faceless assessment scheme. While the 58,000 cases under limited scrutiny have started being processed, and then we'll have full scrutiny. There was a question that was being raised that whether the full the limited scrutiny can get converted into the full scrutiny in the faceless assessment. While, as I said, that the life is normal, the provisions of the law would still equally apply, but I would say there is a comfort that has been given by the, I would say, the authorities and the principal CID. Very rarely we will convert the limited scrutiny into a full scrutiny. The reason being that the criteria that would be applied, or the filter that would be applied to decide on a limited scrutiny or a full scrutiny, would be basis lot of evidences, basis lot of information that has been collated. So therefore, unlikely there will be a situation where the government will have to take a decision to move from limited scrutiny to a full scrutiny. While the government is also, I would say, not come out with any guidelines, the government will consider and will come out with the guidelines as far as this is concerned. So let me move to the next stage, which is the faceless assessment stage, which is how do you manage this phase? As we said that we have done, if we have done like half of the work, like if we are running a marathon, whether it is 21 kilometer or 42 kilometer, remember that you don't run 21 kilometer on that day. In fact, you run hundreds of kilometers prior to that, right? So therefore, you are able to run efficiently. So similarly, as we said that the stage 1, we have run hundreds of kilometers and prepared ourselves, and therefore we need to be ready. But there are cases where, like, take an example, we may get a new client, so therefore we don't know. So therefore we'll have to still go through the process and then get ourselves to, I would say, understand the client, their industry issues and everything. But more importantly, as I said, that we need to have a clear understanding of the FS, the authorities, their roles, responsibilities, their profile, and how the things move, and how to take the advantage of those four, I would say, the opportunities of the assessment that is being provided. And therefore, that's where I would say our intellectual will work, and that's where we'll have to guide the client and navigate successfully through the assessment. Then we also need to, as I said, proactive in identification of the issues. So when the notice comes, obviously you need to first two things assess. One is that technically this notice is correct, because the finance minister said that every notice from the department, whether on GST, whether on income tax or any other, would have a unique digital document identification number, and you can verify that on the website, that whether it is a fake number or whether it is a fake notice or a real notice. So therefore you need to make sure that you test that, you authenticate that documentation identification number, and then don't just stop at the notice. Understand what is the nature of the notice, whether it is a limited, whether it is a full scrutiny. Then also start in the next slide, I'll explain you the whole process, that how you go about it kind of. But you need to start thinking about what are the issues and preparing for the submissions. The moment you receive the notice, while you will have a lot of questions, but I think you need to start not only just attacking on the questions, or just like in an exam, we just see that, okay, there is a paper and we start writing the answers. No, we don't do. We spend 5 minutes on deciding that which answer to give first, which answer to give later, which is easier, which is where we get stuck, and so on and so forth. Similarly here also, we need to reflect back and understand about the business of the client, about the industry of the client, because we need to be mindful that this is the beginning. And if we don't understand our client, we don't understand the business, we don't understand the financials, we don't understand the various other flow of information or the data that has been provided by the client to various authorities, then I think we'll not be able to handle the assessment meaningfully. So therefore, we need to understand those, we need to review those documents, and we need to proactively identify what are the issues which have been raised by the authorities and what are the issues which are ahead of us. So that we need to start thinking ahead of us, and that's where my third eye, which I talked about, intellectual, that's where we will start using and prioritizing submissions and work towards it. We also I would say they create a repository of data as tax consultants, or if the company has their in-house functions, that what kind of different notices have been issued in the group, what kind of issues have been taken in the past assessments, what kind of similar issues have been raised in the similar industry or the other industries, what are the industry agnostic issues that are being taken up by and picked up by the department. So all these repository needs to be created by either the taxpayer himself or by the tax advisors, because we would be handling so many clients with the same set of businesses. So therefore, we need to have an insight about those, I would say, the situations, and we should be able to have a meaningful discussions with our clients and meaningfully able to prepare our submissions in that direction. We also need to understand, as a part of the process, what are the non-compliances that the client has done, because non-compliances of the client can have serious ramifications. So like, take an example, non-compliance in FEMA can have an implications of the tax, in the sense that it would be non-compliance or violation of the FEMA regulations, and therefore proviso to section 37 will come your way and result into a disallowance of that expenses. Or like, take an example, if there are non-deduction of TDS, then obviously what happened that there is going to be a disallowance, and if the client has not done the disallowance, then the client runs the risk of the, what you call it, the penalty. And therefore, that's why we need to tell the client that whether is there a need for filing a revised return to take care of these non-compliances before the tax authority is identified or before 147 and 148 happens. Here again, what is important now, as I said, that our networking skill, in a sense, has gone down. Our physical ability to explain the tax authorities have diluted significantly. So we are not in front of the client, we are not in front of the tax authorities, because many a times what happens that we smartly understand the client and we try to diffuse the question there and there by giving an answer. So we avoid certain questions that comes to us in writing. We avoid certain giving the documents where there are some tricky areas or there are some issues. So therefore, we have been, I would say, trained for so many years to, I would say, manage those situations, or what I call it as the manage the risk. But now that, I would say, is not available to us. So that skill is, I would say, not available to us in terms of. So therefore, we'll have to visualize the same situation in front of us and start strategic thinking and have discussions with the clients that what could be the approach? How do I approach this notice? How do I approach this assessment? I need to understand the perspective of the tax authorities. I need to understand that, as I said, that from the repository of the data, that what are the industry issues, how the revenue has been reaching out and tackling those industry issues. Now we are in what we call it as the VUCA world, or a kind of a transparent world, where a lot of information is available to us at our fingertips. So therefore, this information we need to collect that, and therefore the 3I, information I, is very important for us also, and we need to decide. We also need to decide about the timing of the submissions, whether I should file the timing, full submissions, half submissions. Again, I need to see the penal consequences. What are the timelines for me? What is the quality? Quality of submissions is going to be very, very important in this entire process. And that's where I would say the whole strategic thinking has to go, in terms of how do we make representations, how the submissions should look like, whether we should have 100-page submissions. Obviously, we'll not have the ability, or the officer will not have the ability to, I would say, go through that 100 pages. So therefore, how do we highlight our points? How do we make that submissions with certain executive summaries and highlight the specific points? What is the supporting document that we have to give? Because once that document is given, is gone, you can't retract. So it will become a trail, audit trail, and therefore the document can be used against our taxpayers. So therefore, we need to be very clear about what document to give, not to give, and it can act as a double-edged sword. So therefore, we need to understand the ramifications. We need to also ask the client to do the reconciliation of the data, whether it is 26As or whether it is the submissions made to the RBI, submissions made under GST, and so on and so forth. And then finally, we need to also be mindful that, and also be very quick to see that, okay, the case is very complex, and therefore we need to hit the right button for a personal hearing, though it will be through video conferencing. But that's, I would say, the time that we will take a call and tell the client that this is the right time that we should go for and request for a personal hearing under the video conferencing. Now, this is the heart of what we call it as the faceless assessment, because we don't know the officer, we don't know much about the profile, we don't know how the process and how the things will hold. So what will speak is not our words or what we present. What will speak is our submissions. So therefore, we need to review the notice very carefully. We need to see that whether any technical defects, so raise the objections. Otherwise, what are the questions that are being asked? We need to understand the perspective there. Why the authorities have asked these questions? What is the intent behind? What is it that looking it for? And therefore, accordingly, how do I give my submissions, and so on and so forth. Then also discuss that with your taxpayers, and also gain their understanding, take them into confidence, because it's the last thing that the client would come back and say that you took the call of making the submissions, and because of that I got demand. And the days are gone when the client would, I would say, sit quiet. They would either take away your files, they will make a claim against you. So therefore, there are a lot of, I would say, the consequences of not engaging with the client or not taking the client in confidence. You need to do a detailed analysis before you actually make the submissions of your tax returns filed, tax audit report, transparency documentation, GST returns, before you decide what should be your strategy, what should be your approach, what should be your content of what you call it as the submissions. Then the quality versus quantity. This is very important. So up till now, the approach has been that file burdo. So let's make the file bulky so that it looks like that the assessing officer has done the job, and he will pick up 4 or 5 points, the assessment is completed. Now that approach is not going to work, because there are constraints in terms of the data that can be uploaded, and at the same time there are constraints both on the taxpayer side, tax consultant side, and the administrative side. So therefore, that bulging data is not going to help. What is going to help is the crisp and the precise submissions. So you can make your detailed submissions, but it has to be crisp, precise. Your executive summary, you need to make it a point, just like in a C exam, that there are thousands of students give the exam, or next of students give the exam, but hardly 4 to 5% of the students clear, right? So therefore, it's not that all 100,000 students don't, I would say, take efforts or are not hardworking and studious, but what differentiates them is their intellectual. What differentiates them or make them succeed is their approach, how they are approaching, how they are, I would say, demonstrating or depicting their, I would say, the knowledge and projecting in a most effective manner. So similarly here also, it is like an exam for us. Our submissions have to be very crisp, precise, to the point, not to say more, not to say less, make sure that there are no non-disclosure kind of situations. We also need to decide the timing, that what is it that we want to make a full disclosure, whether we want to make a partial submissions, that there are options available to make a full submissions or a partial submissions. So the quality of submissions is the heart. And that's where I said that the strategy is going to be very, very important. And that's where I think the role of chartered accountant is very important, and we need to take this, I would say, a very, very, I would say, seriously, and with lot of, I would say, efforts and integrity. Then we also have to take support, whether to use the judicial precedents, not to use judicial precedents, whether to quote the entire decision or whether to quote the paraphrase of the decision. Mind well, now we have thousands and thousands of decisions. So if we don't read the judgment, if we just kind of just flag that judgment, then possibly now the department is more equipped, because it is not the assessing officer that they will just put that into your file. Now that data is going to be looked at quickly, and there is a I would say a lot of, I would say, artificial intelligence that has been put by the department. So they will be able to immediately find out that this judgment is relevant or not relevant, or possibly they will find out that there are some adverse remarks that have been made and that could go against you. So therefore, you need to be mindful of using the judgment, how to, I would say, use the judgment, take the benefit of the other legislation, the way that the revenue is also using the information of the other, I would say, the department. Similarly, we also take support if there are no supports in the tax, I would say, legislation, that use the support from FEMA, SEBI, company law, RERA, and then strengthen our case, or under the GST, strengthen our case about the submissions. Then also, wherever we are making the submissions, please make sure that those submissions do not have any adverse impact on the transfer pricing, GST, or any other proceedings that are going on or that can be initiated against your client based on the submission that has been made. So this is very, very important. You also need to assess that there is a need for seeking any guidance of a larger firm or a senior counsel or your colleague. Please reach out to them, because it is a collaborative effort, and I think the WRC or the ICA has already created that platform of networking, so you can network and also, I would say, work out in such a way we all are able to, I would say, support our clients. The last thing that you should do is avoid delay and non-compliances. Please make sure that all your notices are being compliant, because by not doing this, there are penalty consequences of non-submissions. But what is more important, that you could face a base judgment assessment, and the taxpayer profile and your profile also can be a negative. That means that the tax authorities are building a profile of the taxpayer, and that tax profile can be used against the taxpayer when a decision with regard to levy of penalty or decision with regard to search surveys to be carried out. So this information of non-compliances or delays can be used against various other proceedings. The documents to be submitted, so there is a procedure given in my lecture, the whole procedure that you need to follow. There are limitations. You can maximum 50 MB you can upload at a point in time. So therefore, a facility has been given for a partial submission or full submission. So it is very important that when you make a submission, select that button, whether it is a final submission, because the moment you say it is a final submission, that means you will not have an opportunity to further submit. So therefore, make sure that whether it is a partial, whether you still have to submit this, so therefore make it as a partial submission when you are submitting. And then when the assessment happens, everything is hunky-dory. Before the assessment happens, as I said, that there are 3 or 4 opportunities that comes to the taxpayer or the tax consultant. So that's where in those 4 opportunities, again, there is an opportunity to further refine, further strengthen the submissions, to make sure that those submissions are being further refined and further strengthened. And then when the final assessment comes, or the draft assessment comes, or therefore, as I said, that the opportunities are there, so therefore we need to raise objections, we need to trigger the right button to say that whether we need the personal hearing and so on and so forth. And the last most important thing, be in regular communication and discussions with your taxpayers to manage the risk, because managing risk is very important. And in fact, the government themselves have realized that the risk is very high when you do what we call it as on an automated basis. So therefore, the risk is very high, and we need to manage the risk for our own fortune and for the fortune of the client. So these are some of the, I would say, the heart of, to my mind, the faceless assessment. And then we have a post-assessment stage also, which is also going to be very faceless. So therefore, a lot of, I would say, the principles would equally apply. And here also we need to be mindful of helping our client in terms of whether there is an area of rectification. So I mean, reflect that. What are the issues that needs to be taken up in the appeal? We need to decide whether we want to go for take that point both in the rectification and appeal, because there are situations we have seen that there are refunds which are stuck, and therefore if you have taken a point both in the rectification and the appeal, then your refund gets stuck, because the officer will say that since you have taken that point in the appeal, I'm not going to pass the rectification, and if he's not going to pass the rectification, our refund gets stuck. So therefore, these are very important decisions that one need to take, whether to go for rectification or whether to go for appeal. And when even you go for the appeal, it is very important that you need to understand that what are the technical points that you want to take it on appeal. Is there any deficiency in the order? If there is any deficiency in the order, and then you want to take a technical objection to the appeal, so therefore identify that and take that ground of appeal, and also make sure that you are able to take the right, I would say, the grounds on the substantial issues, because many a time what happens that we see that the grounds are not adequate, and therefore the one has to go for an additional ground, and admitting the additional ground is a prerogative of the appellate authority. So therefore you may or may not be heard, and possibly you may lose the chance of making a good representation for your clients. And rest is all, I think, the same that we have been doing. But again, more important, as I said, that while here we'll have some certain personal opportunities, but lot of things again will go under the automated. Some situations, like take an example, search and survey cases, obviously they are out of faceless assessment, or the faceless, I would say, the out of digital era. So possibly that's where we'll be able to use our networking skill. Or maybe take an example in settlement commission that Mr. Jain talked about it. There we'll have our, I would say, the ability to use all our networking skills and use our own personal skills while making a representation before the settlement commission. So therefore, here again is a very important aspect. We should not dilute that assessment is over and nothing to worry about. So we are out of what we call as a dark box. It's like, take an example, when we go to Imagica, there are a lot of rights, and those rights are bumpy rights, but in the dark, right? So when you come out, obviously you say, gosh, right? So at least I'm out, so I can see the light. And that's not the end. Yes, there is a light, but again, then we have to go through the next right, or we have to go to the next right? So it's like going through the Imagica, and therefore this, I would say, the stage is equally important, because this stage again builds a case or builds a foundation for the virtual or a faceless appeal or a faceless appellate proceedings, whether it is CIT appeal, whether it is tribunal, whether it is High Court, whether it is Supreme Court. So if you have not done your job right here, then again you will have a challenge at the time of making effective representations. Then the next stage is an appeal stage. So here again is a faceless. I know I have got 25 minutes clear. So this is again, I will not have too much on this stage, but same principles that we'll have to apply over here when we are in appeal stage, because the government is going to announce on 25th April the faceless appeal or the automated appeal process. And there also the government is thinking that it would be again a team-based approach, and not that one CIT appeal will decide the fate of the appeal, but there will be many CIT appeal will apply their brains and then decide the issue. Again, here also there is going to be a specialization. There is going to be a lot of inputs that will come from the technical unit. And remember, the data which has been collected by the department as a part of the faceless assessment proceedings can also be transferred, can also be transitioned, can also be accessed by the appellate authorities while taking a decisions on the case of your client. So therefore, up till now, what used to happen that because of it was physical and because of a lot of challenges and because of the, I would say, the best practices, or not the best practice, because of the practices that are being used, a lot of data never reached the CIT appeal, and therefore the CIT appeal was not in a position to go through everything. Yes, he had an option of a remand report, but that is again not that effective for deciding that issue. So therefore, here again, there will be a lot of data that will be available at the appeal stage. Here again, we will not have what we call as the personal hearings. We will have the hearings, but those are video hearings, and we have experienced some of the video hearings at DRP or some of the CIT appeal. They do not have hours and hours. So they have sometimes 15 minutes to finish your case. They have half an hour to finish your case. Sometimes complex, they will do it 1 hour. So therefore, your submissions, your appeal memo, what you had submitted at the time of the appeal, should be very good, very crisp. And when you make your submissions, again, make your executive summary, make your highlight the points. Again, all those points that I talked about, using judicial precedents, not precedents, documents, so and so, all those things need to be, I would say, kept in mind when we are representing our client at the appellate stage, and strictly follow the SOP issued by the appellate administrative authorities, because in the personal hearing also there are strictures or stinctures that have been issued by the judicial authorities. So here again, they can also pass that, and that can go against the SSE. So therefore, this is very important. Again, non-compliance is avoided, should be avoided, because that can have what we call it as the negative or adverse repercussions. And the final technical aspects is what we call it as the sorry, I think there is some problem. Yeah. So the final aspect of what we call it as the infrastructure aspects. So one need to make sure that we have the right infrastructure. We have trained our staff. We have changed in the mindset. So there is a huge need for change in the mindset. The government has already done that mindset change. We need to, at our, I would say, and we need to change the mindset. We also need to change the mindset of the client. It's not easy, but certainly we'll have to take them through this journey if we have to make an effective, I would say, the faceless or representation before the authorities, whether it is an assessment stage, whether it is an appeal stage. So therefore, this is very important. Again, 3I, so this whole sum and substance of this part, I would say this slide is 3I. Information, you should have the right information in the right fashion and accessible at your, I would say, fingertips, at your end, at your client's end. You should be more intellectual, more strategic thinker, and you should have the right infrastructure so that you are able to deliver what is to be delivered to the authorities, right? Now, there are a lot, I would say, the questions that emerged, and obviously, as a human psychology, anything something new, we are not ready to accept it. We always find loopholes, or we always find that there are some challenges. Certainly, anything that happens new to us, it's nothing perfect. Life is not perfect. Similarly, the scheme is not perfect. Similarly, the authorities are not perfect. But I think what is important, that an endeavor is made, and therefore same endeavor that we have to make to see to it that we are able to deliver to our clients. Because mind well, if we don't deliver ably, we don't efficiently, and we do not manage the risk for the client, then obviously we will not have the job. We will lose the client. We will lose our credibility. So this is very, very important. And what is important is managing the risk. Again, I'm saying that managing risk has become very, very important in today's time. We'll have to manage the risk as far as our risks are concerned. We have to manage the client risk, because the aim of the government is moving towards what you call it as the large assessments. The number of, I would say, the scrutiny you would have heard and read in the newspapers and the reports, that has even gone down to almost 0.26%. So therefore, the number of scrutinies are going down, but the rigor of scrutiny will increase manifold. And with this, I would say, the faceless assessment, virtual appeal scheme, and everything, and the 4 pillars that I talked about, which is the project insight and so on and so forth, there is, I would say, a huge, I would say, emphasis is given on the big data analysis, collation of information, exchange of information, working on the technical position, strengthening the order. So the days are gone where the department has been losing a lot of cases, but now I think the cases or the assessments which will be made by the department would be very strong and would be justified with a strong rationale and I would say the database that is available to them. So therefore, the quality of the assessment is going to be very high. The stakes involved are going to be far higher. So therefore, we as consultants, or we as I would say the tax torchbearer of the organization, needs to equip ourselves so that we are able to handle those situations in a more meaningful, more effective manner. As I said, there are various points for considerations. I'm not going to get too much into detail, but yes, many of these issues have been addressed by the question answer, which I'm going to take you through some of the questions. So these are the points very important for your considerations. I am giving it to you for your considerations. These are some of the questions which are either addressed by the authorities or there are still some open questions with regard to the faceless assessment scheme. And as we go along the journey, the revenue authorities is determined to address all these issues, and they are, I would say, very open to listen to our issues and questions which are being raised through various forums. So therefore, if you have any questions and issues, please raise to the right forum and you'll be able to get the answer or those will be addressed. But one of the important points that stuck to me, whether the past history of the SSE has made available to any SE, because up till now we have seen that in the assessment, past history is not being questioned except that the officer is the same and then, or he may make the same adjustments he wants to make, that's fine. But there are a lot of past history in terms of non-compliances, in terms of search, survey and all those things are not being actually taken cognizance of in the assessment. But now with this, I would say the data that is being collected at the NESE level, possibly the past history can also be looked at while deciding the questionnaire, while framing the assessments, and so on and so forth. Whether any SE will have power to levy, answer is no, except that if there is a non-compliance in between the process, which is like 271B penalty, that would be levied, otherwise no penalty would be levied. Whether claims not considered in the ITR, whether somebody can make fresh claims, can be made before the NESE, the answer is yes, the law remains the same. You can still make your fresh claims during the assessment proceedings the way that we are able to make it. So be careful, be mindful, be vigilant that if there are any claims which are missed out, please make it during the assessment proceedings. While the tax authorities following the Itsc decision of the Supreme Court may reject it, but there are various other Supreme Court judgments to say that if those are legitimate benefit, that should be provided by the assessing officer. So therefore, one need to be very careful about it. I talked about the limited to the to the full scrutiny. Adjournment, is it possible? There is a question. Yes, adjournment is possible. You need to give valid reasons and not physical. It should be online, but make sure that the number of adjustments are counted, being monitored, and that can impact the what you call it as the profile of your client. And if you are making adjournment on your letterhead, it can impact your profile as well as a tax provider. There are a lot of, I would say, since the 13th August 2020, a lot of, I would say, the questions have emerged, and law has been talked about in media. A lot of questions, I would say, have been proactively thought by the revenue authorities and have been addressed by the revenue authorities as part of their presentations to WRC or India Federation, Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, or by some of the big fours have organized those sessions, or some of the other associations have organized. So a lot of, I would say, the questions have been clarified. So therefore, it is important that we understand what are the questions and what are the answers. So these are nut and bolts, as I say, so that it helps us to understand the process better, and it empowers us to deal with the faceless assessment journey more effectively and make it more meaningful for us. So let me just take, I will not, I would say, take you through all these questions, but the fundamental question is that whether this has become mandatory. Yes, this has become effective mandatory from 13th August 2020. So all pending assessments for the assessment year 18-19. All the pending assessments of assessment year 18-19 and some of the assessments of 17-18 which are taken up under transpricing will be transitioned, not of the non-resident but of the resident transpricing have been transitioned to NESE. Assessment for 18-19 have been transitioned, 19-20 also have been transitioned, and 20-21 and all assessments. In fact, the 3 days before or the last week, the CBDT also issued the guidelines for the selection of the cases for the scrutiny for 2021. So similar to like every year, the CBDT issues the guidelines that what are the criteria for selection. So please go through that. It is very important. While it is distant away, but it is very important. In terms of the timeline, you all know that the timeline for the assessment year 18-19 has been extended to 31st March 21. And similarly for the 19-20, the timeline has been extended to 30th September 21. So therefore, effectively, from today onwards, we have only 6 months for 18-19, 17-18 some cases, and another 6 months for 19-20. So we have only 1 year window available to manage the 2 or 3 assessment years depending on the situation. And there are a lot of other deadlines that will come in on account of GST, tax audit, these, that, so many things. So therefore, we need to start preparing and gearing up our clients for preparing for the faceless assessment. So we need not have to think about whether the client's case will come up for scrutiny or not. But I think we, as I said, that applying our 3I, one of the I out of 3I, intellectual, and basis the data of the client and the industry, I think we should be able to predict that the client's case could come up for scrutiny. And we have the guidelines for the scrutiny which has been rolled out by the CBDT. So looking at that, possibly we would be able to foresee that yes, there is going to be a hearing that will come up, or there's going to be a scrutiny assessment that come up. So start what is called your pre-assessment stage today for 19-20 and 2021, and start your process for what you call it as the full scale assessment proceedings for the stage 2. While the government is finishing 58,000 limited scrutiny cases, but what I understand, maybe mid-October or end of October, the government will start issuing the 143 notice for a full scrutiny for the assessment year 19-20, because full scrutiny notice as for 18-19 has already been issued. Now, there are an exclusions which has clearly been laid out, that the cases which have been selected under survey, search, not survey, but search and seizure, or serious frauds, or major tax evasion, or under Black Money Act or Benami law, or the cases which are in the central circle are not part of the faceless assessment scheme. They will be done in a normal manner. But again, the government is also considering that how to automate some of the processes on that side also. So therefore, possibly we will see the hybrid, I would say, the process. We may not be able to meet the authorities, but we will be following what we call it the e-assessment protocol, where we have to make all the submissions on the portal, and we will have an ability of a video conferencing, not a personal hearing, unlike in the e-assessment that we had. So therefore, the government is discouraging the personal, I would say, touch and the personal rapport that between the taxpayer and the tax administrator. So all ongoing notices now will be issued by the NESE. So the cases have already been transferred, the jurisdictions have already been transferred, so on and so forth. And as I said, that this is a jurisdictional less assessment. So therefore, you do not know from where your assessing unit is there. You do not know where the verification unit is there. So therefore, possibly all may be in one city, or all may be in 4 different cities and doing their work seamlessly, flawlessly using the technology. So therefore, we need to be mindful that these are 4 different, I would say, the dark forces which are coming to us, and we need to deal with them very, I would say, intellectually, very strategically. The another question that highlighted, which is whether uploading of responses to portal without DSC is enough. So answer is no. As I said, that each notice will have a document identification number, and each, I would say, similar to like what we have been doing on e-assessment, that every documentation has to be, or any submissions has to be supported by digital signature or electronic verification port. So this is a same procedure. I've given few slides, 5-6 slides in terms of the procedure. There are, as I said, that limitations in terms of the number of documents, but be mindful of the fact that we have an option of a partial or a full submission. So please don't forget to select that button, that whether it is a partial submissions or a complete submissions. And also, as I said, that there are emails that will be available for facilities or helplines, so that if you have missed out, possibly you'll be able to either reach out the NESE or your, what you call it, as the jurisdictional assessing officer, and then he in turn would be in a position to send out your details to the right, I would say, the assessing unit, to the NESE. I talked about that opportunity of hearing would be given, and therefore, but that would be again very limited, because there are restrictions that have been provided, and the guidelines also will be issued by the severity, and there are a lot of approvals that would need to be obtained by principal CIT in the RESE and NESE before permitting somebody to go for what we call it as the video conferencing facility or personal hearing. But nonetheless, if the case is complex, as I said, that one need to be mindful of that opportunity and pick up that opportunity. Somebody had also raised the question that whether the tax authorities will be able to make a phone call. The answer is no, as I said, that they will not. So please don't use your letterhead with your phone number and everything. And in case the phone call comes and they ask for any unnecessary, I would say, the information which is not relevant with the assessment, please, you can file a complaint. And similarly, if you make a call, your call can also be tracked, and your call also can be, I would say, recorded, and you could also be in trouble. The next question that has come up, and these are all, not that all the questions are being clarified by the CBDT. Some have been clarified by the CBDT, some have been clarified by the principal CIT and their team on the various conferences, and more to be, I would say, FAQs to be rolled out by the CBDT basis the questions that are being submitted by various organizations. I talked about the limited to the full scrutiny, so I'm not going to talk about it. I think one of the fundamental questions on a dynamic jurisdiction that arises, that what will happen to our I would say, constitutional rights to say that the jurisdictional rulings are binding on the tax authorities, and therefore whether that, I would say, the principle has been completely gone away. That's a cardinal principle of, I would say, the interpretation of the law. And therefore, there are a lot of questions that have been raised by many forums, that what will happen if the jurisdiction is not known. While I know what is the jurisdictional assessing officer based on my PAN number, but for the assessment, the assessing unit is fungible, and possibly there could be two assessing units doing the assessment. So therefore, then which law would be applied? Whether if one, all the principles that the jurisdiction ruling will be binding are there, are not there, are all gone completely. There, I think the authorities are very clear that there is no change in the law, there is no change in the constitutional framework. The judicial rulings are binding on the tax authorities, and it will be driven by jurisdiction, your SSC, where your jurisdiction, permanent jurisdiction is. But what is being talked about, that the government, as I said, that using the technical unit and the intelligence and the industry insights and foresights and all that, they will now come out with standardized positions to say that, like take an example, depreciation on goodwill or merger, whether it will be available, possibly there will be a standard dicta, sorry, that will not be available. Whether 14A disallowance would happen in a case of strategic investments, possibly because of the Supreme Court ruling, the dictat would be that, okay, it should be allowed, and therefore there won't be any disallowance at all. So we'll see a lot of consistency and harmonization across industries, across the assessments, and some of the generic issues and the industry specific issues. It has both the positives and the negatives, because possibly everybody could be painted with the same brush. But there are a lot of, I would say, the voices have been raised and a lot of alarms have been raised to say that this should not, a same common brush should not be used to paint all the issues, all the industries, because there are unique issues, unique facts in each and every industry, unique transaction, unique situations. So that should be given, I would say, due importance, and the submissions that have been made by the taxpayer should be given due importance, and those should not be just ignored, brushed aside to say that this is the standard position and therefore just follow, don't look at the submissions. So therefore I think that it has been echoed by the, I would say, the principal CIT and their team, that this is not going to happen, and a lot of I would say care would be taken before taking that position. And as I said, that there is a risk management policy which will be rolled out by the CBDT and given it only to any SE, because any SE is responsible for the risk management, and that is where one of the risk is this, that this should not have an adverse impact on the businesses, and this should not create any negative impression about the Indian judicial system on our taxpayers, whether resident taxpayers or non-resident taxpayers. I did talk about the past history. Yes, certainly it will be considered. I did talk about the video conferencing. Yes, but there is a protocol that one needs to follow, and that is being given in para 12 7B of the notification or the scheme that has been issued on 12 September 2019. I did touch upon the levy, power levy. Yes, the NESE has only one power to levy one penalty, which is the non-compliance, in a sense that if the notices have not been answered on time, or if the submissions have been not timed, then under section 271B, I remember, I don't recollect the section exactly, but that's where the assessing officer has the power to levy penalty. So before the assessment is completed, he will inform the NESE that this penalty needs to be levied in his draft assessment order, and then NESE will, I would say, initiate penalty proceedings. There is a process that has been laid down. There is an opportunity of what you call it as the submissions that would be provided. That submissions would be considered by the officer, and basis, I would say, the circumstances and the submissions, a decision would be taken whether the penalty would be levied or not levied. All the rest of the penalties would fall out of the faceless assessment scheme and will lie with the jurisdictional officer. But again, there also it is going to be a faceless and not going to be a physical. Then transfer pricing, again, it has been clarified that as far as non-resident taxpayer, do I have 5-10 minutes more, or do you want me to wrap it up?
Jayesh,
No.
you can, not an issue.
Yes.
Jayesh, you can take your time, not an issue. We have
Can I
time.
continue for the
Yeah, please continue.
Okay, great. But I'm not able to see the numbers that, oh yeah, we have 247, so we've dropped on some of them. Hey, hi, Anand, how are you? Good to see you.
Hello, sir. I'm good.
Hope my presentation is going right. Please give me feedback. And if you want you put me a stop or a break, please do that. Sorry, because I will talk a lot. So
we can proceed, Jayesh.
Sorry, Anand.
We can proceed.
Okay, great. So I will do the transfer pricing. Non-resident taxpayers transfer pricing will still continue to be with the transfer pricing section, and then will be done by the transfer pricing authorities. Again, the guidelines will come that whether it is going to be faceless or whether there is going to be hybrid. But yes, it has the e-assessment start process has already started as far, so therefore possibly the revenue would use the same process for the transfer pricing. But for the resident taxpayers, if they have paid to a non-resident, and if that has been selected for transfer pricing, then all those cases have been moved to the under the faceless assessment scheme, and the technical unit will do the transfer pricing, because as I said that there are TP experts or TP officers have been transitioned to the RESE as part of technical unit, and therefore they will be able to do it. And if they need any input, then obviously they will take the inputs from the transfer pricing, other transfer pricing wings, and they will give their inputs to the assessing units, and assessing unit in turn will finalize the assessment both on the normal issues and also on the transfer pricing issues. Whether the option for filing additional evidence under section 46A as far as the appeal is concerned, whether that would be available, the answer is yes. As I said, that there is no change in the legislative, I would say, or the provisions of the Income Tax Act. So therefore, Rule 46A still survives. The only thing that we need to see the guidelines which are going to be rolled out from 25th September 2020 with regard to this. Also the question arose that how the remand report function will function. Here again, possibly it will be clarified that yes, the CIT appeal basis the evidence is furnished, have a right to ask for a remand report from the assessing officer, and that remand report would be made available by the jurisdictional assessing officer because it will not go under the faceless assessment purview. And there also I would say the proposition is not to have a personal hearing, but to again do it on a faceless manner or an Itsc manner, electronic manner. So again, there is no, I would say, none of the rights which are available under the Income Tax Act with regard to assessment or with regard to what we call it as the 144A, or with regard to rectification, with regard to 142A, which is a reference to the valuation report, or with regard to special audit, with regard to remand report. So all those provisions will act and will remain in force as is today. So the faceless assessment is not taking away those rights. Only thing is the process is different, that's all. But otherwise, all the legislations, all the judicial precedents given in that context would still survive. Which tax affidavit is to be addressed for filing an appeal against the assessment order? So yes, all the assessment order will have the your jurisdictional assessing officer as part of REAC, and therefore you will have to file an appeal. Similar to like any other notice of demand that you will receive, we'll have a jurisdictional officer against, and basis that jurisdictional officer, you will be able to decide which CIT appeal that you want to file an appeal. But as I said, not necessary that the one CIT appeal will decide. It will be maybe a team of CIT appeal who will decide. There was an interesting question raised that whether under faceless assessment, who will have the power to withhold the refund by exercising 241A power. I'm not going into detail about what 241A is all about. But here, this function will be exercised by the jurisdictional officer, because this power of recovery is still with the jurisdictional officer. But the government is still considering whether it should be done only by the jurisdictional officer, it should be done along with the NESE. So therefore, a few more guidelines or further guidelines that we are going to see on this front. But it is being made very clear that 241A power for withholding the refund would be exercised very judiciously, and there will be a monitoring of that power, and therefore there will be a question that could also be raised, because now that can be monitored through the audit trails and everything. Refund, who will determine? So obviously the refund would be determined by the CPC in the normal process, and if the file is assigned to what you call it as the assessing unit or NESE for the faceless assessment, then it will be decided by the what you call it as a jurisdictional officer after the assessment is completed. So here there is some, I would say, practical difficulty that unless the assessment is completed, the refund will not be granted. So possibly here again there could be some challenge in the refund when the 143.2 notice is issued and the assessment is in progress. So possibly the refund could get stuck. But again, the presentations are being made to take care of this situation in early grant of the refund. TDS proceedings are clearly not covered, but again the government is working on it, that even the TDS processing as of today is also through ITBA portal. Many officers are not encouraging the personal hearing, but still today there are officers who are giving personal hearings. But going forward, maybe in a year or two, possibly the TDS function also would become fully automated, and we'll have to go through the same process of what we call it the faceless TDS, and also an optional hearing through video conferencing. DRP covered under faceless assessment scheme? Answer is no. That's a different scheme which is available. So therefore, depending on what the draft final order is being issued under 143.3, obviously the taxpayer will have a right to decide whether you want to go for CIT appeal or whether you want to go for DRP. And the DRP again would be run in the same manner under the same powers, but there also most likely the DRP is going to be electronically or automated. And there is, as I said, that we already been witnessing the faceless hearing or a virtual hearing. Similarly, DRP also maybe going forward would be on a virtual hearing. Therefore, all the principles that we talked about of a faceless assessment, all the guidelines, all the golden rules that we discussed, I would say be relevant and should be applied while we are making the effective representations. Yes, once the scheme says that once the draft assessment order is passed, all the papers would be passed on by the NESC to the jurisdictional officer, and all the processes with regard to recovery, demand recovery, then the rectifications, order giving effect to, and so on and so forth, will be done by the jurisdictional assessment officer, and therefore this is kind of under the normal. But again, when the authorities have also made it very clear that there will be lesser chances of what we call it as reopening, lesser chances of rectifications, because this is going to be a team-based assessments, and a lot of intellectual has gone into the passing of the order. There are 4 times, I would say, the review that is going to happen under this scheme. How it is going to happen? It's going to happen seamlessly, but it is going to happen. There is going to be a magic in this scheme. So therefore, the government entities are that there are going to be less errors and less chances of what we call the reopening of the assessment. 263, whether that can be exercised by the commissioners under Faceless. As I said, yes, 263 is not part of this, and 263 would be exercised independent of the Faceless. But one thing I think the government authorities have been very categorical to say that this power will be utilized judiciously and very sparingly, because earlier there was one officer who was making the assessment order. Now there is a group of assessing officers, so therefore there are less chances that there is a kind of a miss out, because 263 is generally utilized when the order is generally prejudiced to the interest of the revenue. But now in this scheme, there is less chance of an order which is going to be prejudiced to the interest of the revenue. In fact, there are more chances that the order will be prejudicial to the interest of the taxpayer, and that's why there are 4 opportunities that have been provided to allow the taxpayer to present its case before a final order is being given. Whether I talked about whether one can make any additional claims during the assessment proceedings. Yes, if you missed out some claim, the law still remains, your right still remains. You can still make that submissions as part of the assessment proceedings. Therefore, you can still make a claim. But as I said, that you need to be mindful of the Supreme Court judgment in case of words. Some of the officers are not allowing.
We lost your voice.
Sorry?
Not able to hear you, sir.
Now you are able to hear me? Hello? Maybe let me check my. Now you are able to hear me? Hello? Anand? Hello?
Not able to hear you.
Now you are able to hear, because my connection is secure. Hello?
Now
Now you are able to hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay. So the next question is, again, I talked about around 144A and 142A, which is the reference to the valuation officer. So as far as 144A is concerned, yes, it would still hold good, and both the taxpayer and the tax authorities would have a right to reach out to the principal CIT and make a reference. But again, I would say the caution would be applied, and very sparingly these provisions would be applied, because it's a team-based assessments and intellectual-based assessment. As far as these valuation, reference to valuation is concerned, yes, it will be like as usual, as normal. But here, obviously, we'll not have an opportunity of representing before the valuation authorities. Everything that we'll have to route it through what we call it as the NESC, and therefore the NESC, all submissions. If we have any objection to what we call it as the valuation report or the valuation that is being done by the valuation officer, we have a right to object. We'll have the opportunity to object, but everything through the NESC. Another interesting question, that how the provisions of the invocation of GAR would happen, and whether it would be used what we call it as across the board, and who would take the decisions with regard to GAR, because here again then the approval of the principal CIT is required to be taken before a GAR is invoked. So obviously these are all the informal clarifications given by the revenue authorities, that today up till now they are saying that no GAR has been invoked. Even going forward also the GAR would be invoked in a very meaningful manner and very sparingly, and there will be an SOV that will be issued with regard to the what you call it as the approval process in the faceless assessment scheme, because it is a part of the faceless assessment scheme. So therefore, obviously whether it should be a decision to be taken by the principal CIT at the RESE or the principal CIT at the NESE, but more likely than not, it is going to be a principal CIT at the RESE who will take a decision and give their concurrence or go ahead with that. But more, I think we'll be able to hear once the FAQs are going to be rolled out. There are more questions. I talked about whether you can submit in parts or full. Yes, you can submit your submissions in parts. There are buttons, so when you or an option. So when you submit, make sure that you click the right option. And if you by mistake press the wrong option, then immediately I would say reach out to the your officer through an email saying that this mistake has happened and therefore you would like to correct it. The uploading, there is a challenge. There are guidelines, so therefore one need to, I would say, use JPEG. I would say zip files, and each file has to be of 5 MB, so you can split, and that is why the partial upload facility has been provided. So you can do multiple submissions so that these limitations can be overruled. While the government is working on how this data limit can be increased using the technology, but I would say time being, this is the limit that has been provided for submissions. There's a question that how these documents, whether the photo, pictures, JPEG image can be considered. Answer is yes. So today the facility is there. You can take a picture of your, I would say, documents. But more, I would say, importantly, as I said, that infrastructure and technology. For I would say that we have to encourage our client to digitize all their records, which are very relevant, which are required to be submitted to the authorities. Now, one of the question I think that comes to my mind is that whether the digitized, like a lot of questions have come up in the past also, that whether the purchase invoices, even though digitized, whether the revenue authorities will accept that digitized. Now, I think the time has come for the government to, I would say, amend the provisions of that to say that if the digitized document with an appropriate authentication by the authority or by the, I would say, the designated officer within the company, then all the invoices, expense vouchers can be digitized and that can be submitted, because now all these documents in any case need to be submitted what you call it as electronically. So therefore, I think there is a requirement or there is a need to amend the law to provide for this. Okay, then that's all I think from my side. As I said, that if there are survey proceedings, which is like 133, then that would be conducted by the verification units. Questioning will be done through audio conferencing. The data collected would be provided to the assessment unit, and then the assessment would be done. But question was arising that if in a survey there is an impounding of documents and it is not extended into search proceedings, then it will not go to the outside the faceless assessment. It will still remain in the faceless assessment. Arises that whether those documents which have been impounded by the tax authorities, whether those would be made available to the taxpayer, because if those are going to be utilized against the taxpayer, then the taxpayer should have the chance to go through that and make the submissions. So the government has considered that, I would say, the request, and the government is going to come out with appropriate SOP and the guidelines for sharing of those documents which have been collected in the survey, and therefore it will not be, I would say, prejudicial to the interest of the revenue. Now, this is the final slide from my side, which is a key takeaway. So we had a marathon, I would say. I can't complete this in 1.5 hours, but I tried my best to run at much faster speed as I can and completed, I would say, my 42 kilometer marathon. But what is important, I think some of the lessons and the golden principles that we all have to keep in mind, the clients also have to imbibe, is a proactive approach and proactive preparedness, which is a stage 1 that I talked about. enhanced transparency and accountancy. So there is going to be an audit trail of everything. All documents would be available. Data is there. So similarly, when we are exchanging the data with the client, I think our infrastructure should be good enough and transparent enough so that there is an accountability and there is quality data that comes to us, and we are able to transition or we are able to transmit the quality data. Interdepartmental data exchange is going to happen. So therefore, the days are gone that the department does not know where the document is or किसी को पता नहीं चलेगा. All these things are gone. Like in the US, what happens that everything is taxed to your social security number. So if you go to a shopping mall or go to a smallest shop and then you swipe your card for $10, the card is tagged to your security number, social security number, and therefore the IRS has the information that you bought what you call it as the a food packet of $10 or a pen of $10. So that kind of, I would say, the record goes to the authorities. So similarly, we also have the other number, and I would say a lot of insistence on the KYC and a lot of, I would say, focus on the KYC. With that, I think all our records are going to the department, whether it is SEBI, whether it is RBI, whether it is tax authority, whether it is GST, so on and so forth. Everything is available to the government, and there is going to be analysis, big data analysis. AI would play a big role, and then we will be under the net. So we are in the net, and we will be under the net. Your submissions have to be very robust, very precise. Your preparedness has to be very strong, and therefore that's the heart of your faceless assessment. And as I said, stage 3 is also equally important for a virtual hearing. So therefore, stage 3 also needs to be taken care. And yes, there is a better jurisprudence. The quality of the assessment also would be much better, and the quality of appeals or the litigation would also be much higher. So in fact, I was just reading one report on the transfer pricing. In fact, India has surpassed the USA in terms of the not only the quantum of the transfer pricing assessment and the litigations, but also the quality of transfer pricing assessments being done are being, I would say, much higher and much better. And in fact, some of our, I would say, the judicial precedents are being relied upon by the developed and the developing countries. So therefore, the trend is changing. So instead of we relying on the, I would say, the UK judicial precedents, in fact, now the UK and other jurisdictions are relying on the India precedents. So that's going to be the story ahead. Certainly, it's a, as I said, started my presentation, it's a transformation era. Everything is around us getting transformed. So therefore, we need to transform and change ourselves. We need to again focus on our 3I: information, quality of information, intellectual, I would say that we have used in terms of the faceless assessment, and our infrastructure at a client place, our place has to be robust, and more importantly, quality compliance, quality submissions, non-compliances should be avoided, delays should be avoided, because everything is getting profiled, and if there is a negative profile, obviously it's going to be a challenge, and therefore we have to be more proactive. Thank you very much. I hope I have clarified a lot of things. I have a lot of, I would say, steps and guidelines given over here, how to submit, which is similar like e-assessments, and before the 141 is issued or the refund. So that's the step plan. And the slide, these 3 slides are basically for the submissions to be made to the tax authorities as part of the e-assessment procedures. So I've highlighted in bold the important aspects. And these are the best practices for scanning. JPG is also, I said, allowed photocopies. So these are the, I would say, the protocol for the documentation. Then obviously I've just left for the readers what are the advantages of the scheme, disadvantages of the scheme. And the taxpayer charter is very important. It's not just only a piece of document, but it is being now first time in the history in the world has been incorporated as a part of the Income Tax Act. Very few, 4 to 5 jurisdictions have done that. And therefore, it gives the obligations of the taxpayers and the tax authorities, and also, I would say, categorically talks about the rights of the taxpayers. So you should be, I would say, carefully read that document, and see to it that you can take the benefit of the document going forward as part of your journey of the faceless assessment in the virtual hearing. With this, thank you very much for this opportunity, WRC, and thanks my colleagues who I would say listened to me patiently and encouraged me to share my knowledge with all of you. Thank you. Over to you, Anand. Over to you, I said.
Yes,
I rest my presentation.
yes,
Bolo,
yes,
sir.
sir. Yeah, thanks, sir. Sorry.
Not able to hear you.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Jayesh bhai, thanks, sir, for your valuable inputs on behalf of WIRC. We all are grateful to you for your precious knowledge sharing. Thanks for resolving all these queries, giving answer to all these questions. And to all the participants, we are grateful for their active participation for these questions raised. And wishing Jayesh bhai to meet you again and again soon. I shared IS with you so many times at Pune branch, at Nasik branch, and so many times
Yes.
we covered data and real estate related topics. Hope to have you again on real estate conclave. Let's plan it either at WRC or at Pune.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I missed that WRC today, the last minute.
Sorry?
I said I missed your invitation of WRC Pune because that was a too short notice for me.
No issue, sir. Every time you made it possible. Yes, sir. Mishaji, hold on. Yes.
हाँ सर
हाँ जी,
क्या
हो गया
सर
ना सर? हो गया ना
हाँ
सर?
सर हाँ हाँ
Yes, Mishaji, we can close the event.
okay sir thank you
Yeah, Jayesh bhai will connect. That's all. Hello.
Yes.
हाँ सर
Yes, Anand.
Jayesh bhai will connect with you once again, and hope to have you again for real estate conclave.
Sure.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jayesh bhai.
Thank you very much, and thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Thanks. Mishaji, we can close.
हाँ सर thank you